Chapter 3707. Xueping clearly hadn't heard of Sun Kong and Zhang Daren's names. A cultivator beside him was overjoyed. "Senior, are you Sun Kong from Ji Province and Zhang Daren from Jing Province?" "Of course, isn't this Jing Province? Since I'm here, how could I not inform him?" Xiaohua smiled. "Great." The cultivator praised. "Junior is a cultivator from Jing Province and has long heard of Senior Daren's reputation. Unfortunately, I've never had the chance to meet you." Even when fellow Taoist Xue mentioned the ancient forbidden formation, Junior had thought of asking Senior Daren to take action. However, Junior's status and cultivation were truly low and I didn't want more people to know about this matter. That's why I kept delaying it. If Senior Daren were to join us, we would have a greater chance of success. "Hehe, I hope so." Xiaohua looked at Zhai Xingzi and smiled. Finding Sun Kong Shangren and Zhang Daoran for help was Zhai Xingzi's idea. Xiaohua naturally didn't know that it was because Gusu Qiudi saw that Sun Kong Shangren and Zhang Daoran had a very good relationship with him at the Jade Pavilion conference. That was why she encouraged Zhai Xingzi to befriend Zhang Daoran and Sun Kong Shangren. He only felt that since Zhai Xingzi, Zhang Daoran, and Sun Kong Shangren were all late Yuaning stage cultivators with good temperaments, if they worked together, whether it was this ancient forbidden area or their future cultivation, it would be beneficial. Therefore, after thinking about it, he agreed. Xiaohua's communication methods naturally couldn't compare to Zhai Xingzi's. Xiaohua only gave the communication talisman to Zhai Xingzi and had him use an unknown magic tool to send it out. He didn't care about anything else and took the opportunity to find Xueping on the flying boat. Xueping took advantage of the gap between the cultivators' words and discussed with the other cultivators in a low voice. He immediately found out that the two cultivators who didn't come were also late nascent soul cultivators. His face lit up with joy and he was so happy that he couldn't stop smiling. Not only did he feel that he was lucky to have met Xiaohua that day, he also felt that it was fortunate that he didn't choose to leave a few days ago. "Many thanks, Senior Xiao." Xueping sincerely thanked Xiaohua. Xiaohua pointed at Zhai Xingzi and said, "This idea came from fellow Taoist Zhai Xing. You should thank him." While Xueping and the others were complimenting Zhai Xingzi, Xiaohua gave Fujiwen a look. Fujiwen was slightly stunned at first, but he understood in an instant. After Xueping and the others had thanked Zhai Xingzi, he said, "Fellow Xue, I was born in Yu Province, which is quite far from Yong Province and Jing Province. I've never heard of this Misty Mountain maze. If you have the time, can you tell me about it?" Xueping already knew that Fujiwen was Xiaohua's disciple. Although Fujiwen and Xiaohua were not master and disciple in name, they were master and disciple in reality. In the future, Fujiwen's cultivation would definitely be above Xueping's. Therefore, Xueping did not dare to slight Fujiwen. He glanced at Zhai Xingzi and Xiaohua and said with a smile, "Since fellow Fu doesn't know and Senior Xiao and Senior Zhai Xing are also free, then I'll explain it to you. Alright, all of you sit down." Xiaohua smiled and took out a small Chengkuan pouch from his bosom and handed it to Fujiwen. "Since you asked Xueping to explain, you should at least show some appreciation. This is a spirit fruit that this old man has been waiting for a while. Share it with them." "Yes, Senior Xiao." Fujiwen did not address Xiaohua as master in front of so many cultivators. After receiving the small Chengkuan pouch, he took out some spirit fruits and spirit wine and gave them to Xueping and the other cultivators. Everyone sat down and tasted the spirit fruits and spirit wine while listening to Xueping's detailed explanation. Inside the cave, most people were tasting the spirit wine with relish, but Xiaohua was listening to Xueping's explanation with relish. Xueping had spent more than 10 years gathering information about the Misty Mountain maze formation, so he naturally knew the records in his jade eyes. At this moment he was extremely fluent in describing everything no matter how big or small. Xiaohua nodded repeatedly as he listened. Not long after, Xiaohua already understood that this Misty Mountain maze formation indeed had some background. It was indeed worthy of being a legendary ancient forbidden formation. This Misty Mountain maze formation was different from the sage's palace under the river. It was not a place where relics were enshrined, nor was it a place where demonic artifacts were suppressed. Instead, it was a cave abode used by a famous ancient Taoist cultivator, Songlongzi, for a long time before he underwent tribulation. Of course, Songlongzi wasn't famous because he was a cultivator who went through tribulation, nor was it because he had ascended. Instead, it was because of the ink cloud pupil that appeared on the hidden immortal continent. Many of the ancient records recorded a heaven-shaking battle. This battle was a life-and-death battle between Songlongzi and 1,000 demons' sacred realm demon ancestor. Song Longzi was known as the most promising Taoist disciple to undergo tribulation and enter the Mahayana realm at that time, and the Thousand Demons Sacred Realm demon ancestor was also known as the most promising one to become a great sage. There seemed to be no winner or loser in this life and death battle between the two, at least in the known Ink Cloud pupil, there was no record of victory or defeat. All the Ink Cloud pupil only described the ferocity of the battle between the man and the demon, the vastness of their magical powers, and the living beings within a radius of hundreds of thousands of kilometers that were affected. It was not an exaggeration to say that the sky was dark and the earth was falling apart. After the battle that lasted for more than 10 days, everything returned to normal. Neither the man nor the demon died. The demon seemed to have been defeated and left. Song Longzi did not say anything and immediately entered the misty mountain maze to cultivate in seclusion. When he came out of seclusion thousands of years later, Song Longzi welcomed his heavenly tribulation. Song Longzi easily passed the heavenly tribulation and reached the Mahayana realm. Then he sealed the misty mountain maze and floated away, disappearing without a trace. As for whether he ascended or became an immortal, no one knew. According to the Ink Cloud pupil's records and the inference of others, the misty mountain maze not only contained the magic treasures that Song Longzi collected before his tribulation, but also all kinds of rare Taoist spirit pills. Of course, the most important thing was Song Longzi's orthodoxy, as well as his comprehension after the battle and what he obtained before his tribulation. However, the Song Longzi's cave abode was very rich and the restrictive spells were very powerful. Before Song Longzi went into seclusion, he sealed the cave abode with a misty mountain maze to prevent others from disturbing him and the invasion of the Thousand Demons Sacred Realm. It was very difficult to enter without great magic power and great magic power. There were even some strange things recorded in the Ink Cloud pupil's records. When Song Longzi was in seclusion, the misty mountain maze was activated 3 times. The first time, there was a strange phenomenon of thousands of Buddhas chanting together. In the space of tens of thousands of miles, there was a rampant image of the heavenly dragon and many Buddhas. However, the chanting lasted for several months and finally disappeared. The second time, there was a strange phenomenon of rosy clouds covering the sky. The misty mountain maze was covered by colorful clouds for thousands of miles. All the cultivators' divine thoughts, divine senses and eye-clearing spells could not see through it. Moreover, outside the rosy clouds, there was an endless amount of noble spirit that was more turbulent than the tide. The chanting of the students was not inferior to the chanting of the Sanskrit. The strange phenomenon lasted for a whole year. Unfortunately, it still disappeared mysteriously. Although the misty mountain maze was damaged, it was not broken. There was another time that was the most dangerous. It was said that the mountain shook and the earth shook. Thousands of demons attacked the misty mountain maze crazily. Even the stars from outer space came to help. The landscape of thousands of miles around the misty mountain was changed. However, in the end, the strange phenomenon was the same as the previous 2 times. It ended with blood rushing to the sky. Although the misty mountain maze was almost destroyed, it lasted until the end. Although there was no record of the cultivators who came to the misty mountain maze 3 times, everyone could see the power of the misty mountain maze. After that, there was no record of a famous battle. Of course, the reason why the misty mountain maze had been preserved from ancient times until now was not only related to the power of the misty mountain maze, but also to the illusory nature of the maze. This was because not only did the Song Longzi enter and exit from different locations, but the locations of the 3 strange phenomena were also different. It seemed that other than the Song Longzi, no one knew where the misty mountain maze was. At first, Xiao Hua was listening with interest. However, as he listened, the expression on his face changed. In the end, there was a strange look in his eyes as he looked at Xue Ping in disbelief. This was because, in his opinion, the secret land that Xue Ping could find could not be that great. At most, it was a place for training. Previously, he needed to rely on this secret land to shatter the earth crystal Yao milk in his body. However, now he no longer needed to do so. However, since he had promised Xue Ping at most, he would bring Xue Ping in for training and ensure Xue Ping's safety. Even in the country of Dan Liang, Xiao Hua did not mind when Xue Ping bragged that he had accidentally found the ancient forbidden formation. After all, Xiao Hua had seen the ancient forbidden formation before. However, at that time he was already a little vigilant. That was why he brought Zhai Xingzi and Gusu Qiudi over. He even specially used the karma hand on Fujiwen. However, he never expected that the ancient forbidden formation would have such a great background. It was so great that it made him fearful. That was the cave abode of a great cultivator who was close to the tribulation stage. How could it be broken by a mere nascent soul stage cultivator like him? In particular, how could such an important maze be preserved until now? And it just had to be found by a small cultivator like Shui Ping who had just reached the 3rd level of cultivation? This was truly inconceivable. However, when Xiaohua shifted his gaze from Shui Ping to Zhai Xingzi, he could not help but be stunned. This was because Zhai Xingzi's face was no longer as surprised as before. His usually calm face was actually filled with eagerness. This was really rare for the extremely dignified Zhai Xingzi. Even Gusu Qiudi's eyes flashed with fanaticism. It was as if the danger of the misty mountain maze did not attract their attention. That. Xiaohua could not help but speak. He frowned and said to Zhai Xingzi, "Fellow Taoist Zhai Xingzi, don't you think that our strength is not enough to explore the cave abode of this tribulation stage senior?" Shui Ping naturally stopped when Xiaohua spoke. He looked at Xiaohua in confusion. As for Zhai Xingzi, he raised his eyebrows and asked curiously, "Why do you say that? Our strength is around the lower 5th level of cultivation. Is it not enough to deal with this ancient maze? And this Xiao feels that it's beyond my ability." Xiaohua replied earnestly. Chapter 3708. I don't think so. Zhai Xingzi laughed. Shui Ping has already explained it clearly. Moreover, to be honest, I have some understanding of this misty mountain maze formation. Although Senior Tsang Longzi was a cultivator who went through the tribulation, he went through the tribulation after coming out of the Misty Mountain Immortal Abode. In other words, when he set up the maze formation in the Cloud Mountain Immortal Abode, he was merely a 7th grade Essence Force cultivator. Even though the maze formation was powerful and could withstand an 8th grade Essence Force cultivator Taoist master, don't forget, that was during the ancient era, millions and millions of years before our Tao sect's legacy was wiped out. Time has always been the best method to break any formation. I don't think that after so many years of erosion, this Misty Mountain maze formation can still resist against an 8th grade Essence Force. Moreover, based on my previous experience of entering ancient formations, it is already not bad for this Misty Mountain maze formation to be able to resist against a 6th grade Essence Force. It might even be able to resist against an upper 5th grade Essence Force. Taoist Master, have you entered an ancient formation before? Xiaohua asked thoughtfully. Yes. Zhai Xingzi nodded. My cultivation technique actually came from the ancient times. According to what I know, that formation was more than 1,000,000 years later than the Misty Mountain maze formation. If I could break that formation with my cultivation back then, this Misty Mountain maze formation shouldn't be a problem. I see. Xiaohua was still hesitant. Zhai Xingzi looked at Gusu Qiudi beside him and said, "Actually, I want to enter Senior Tsang Longzi's abode not only to break through my current bottleneck, but also to find the answer to a riddle." Riddle? Xiaohua frowned slightly, but then he came to a realization and smiled. The Misty Mountain maze formation is merely the abode that Senior Tsang Longzi used to cultivate before his tribulation. I'm afraid it's not realistic for Taoist Zhai Xing to find the secret of ascension inside. No. Zhai Xingzi shook his head solemnly and said word by word, "I didn't enter the Misty Mountain maze formation to find the trace of Senior Tsang Longzi's ascension, but to find the mystery of our Taoist abode's destruction." It wasn't just Xiaohua. Even Fuji Wen and the others as well as Gusu Qiudi turned pale with fright. They truly didn't expect Zhai Xingzi to have such thoughts. Zhai Xingzi stood up and walked step by step to the entrance of the cave. With both hands clasped behind his back, he looked at the clear sky outside the cave, took a deep breath and said, "Our Tao League cultivators, regardless of whether they are of the 1st tier or the 4th tier, are all more profound and powerful than Confucian cultivators of the same tier. Taoist cultivators breathe in the qi of heaven and earth, communicate with heaven and earth, and draw upon the power of heaven and earth. Meanwhile, Confucian cultivators absorb the qi of righteousness, collude with the humanities and draw upon the accumulated power. Compared to them, Taoist cultivators are much stronger. However, on this hidden immortal continent, our Tao cultivators are firmly suppressed by Confucian cultivators. The entire continent is the world of Confucian cultivators. Although there are traces of our Tao sect in the Thousand Demons Sacred Realm and Paradise, our Tao sect is only a supporting role. This old man has cultivated for several thousand years. I don't dare to say anything else, but anyone who is of the same tier as this old man is no match for this old man, no matter if it is Confucian cultivators, Buddhist disciples, or demons. Therefore, this old man feels that even if Confucian cultivators and Buddhist cultivators join hands, they may not be able to completely wipe out our Tao sect's orthodoxy. This old man wants to find the answer to this riddle from the ancient ruins. Hiss. Xiaohua sucked in a breath of cold air and looked at Zhai Xingzi in a daze. He also didn't expect that this nascent soul cultivator of the hidden immortal continent who was suppressed by Confucian cultivators to this extent still didn't eat his tough bones, still didn't bend his straight waist, and actually wanted to explore the truth buried deep under the dust of time like him, a cultivator from the Dawn Rain continent. Good. This concubine supports you. Gusu Chiodi slapped the table and stood up, clapping her hands and saying, everyone in the world, regardless of their background, is fair. Be it Confucian cultivators or Taoist cultivators, everyone has the right to cultivate. Xiaohua smiled. Looking at this female general of the immortal palace who was at the lower fifth level of elemental energy, and then looking at the Taoist nascent soul cultivator who was overlooking the world outside the cave, this is a true match made in heaven. Xiaohua pondered for a moment and also said, fellow Taoist Zhai Xingzi's idea is good, but Senior Tsang Langzi's cave existed before our Tao sect declined, there may not be any clues inside. In particular, this Xiao has read all the ancient records of the hidden immortal continent. The records of our Tao sect's decline are very clear. The process of the immortal and Buddhist cultivators joining hands to destroy the Tao, and there are also very few ancient records. It can be said that it's as if it's been washed by water, abnormally clean. Even if we take the risk and enter, it's unlikely that we'll find anything. Burning scriptures and destroying the Tao. Zhai Xingzi smiled coldly and said, this is a common method used by Confucian cultivators. Not only did Confucian cultivators destroy ancient records, they even erased the cultivators' memories. Who would know what happened millions of years ago? Not to mention Confucian cultivators, even Buddhist cultivators and demons have this method. At this point, Zhai Xingzi looked at Xiaohua and said, this old man also didn't expect that Taoist Xiao would have the same intention as this old man. I wonder if Taoist Xiao has found anything? Temporarily not. Xiaohua said with a somewhat concealed smile. Zhai Xingzi didn't ask any more questions and continued, of course, even if we can't find the answer to our Tao sect's destruction in Senior Tsang Langzi's cave, if we can find his Tao sect's orthodoxy, it can be considered as finding the complete inheritance of our Tao sect. Our trip will not be in vain. Haha. Xiaohua laughed loudly and said, fellow Taoist Zhai Xing, this Xiao was right to bring you here. Could it be that you also found the flaw in our Tao sect's cultivation method? Could it be that Taoist Xiao? Zhai Xingzi was somewhat surprised. He turned his head to look at Xiaohua and said very thought-provoking, it seems that there are indeed many people with intentions in this world. Since we're all people with intentions, then we should be able to cooperate. Xiaohua's words seemed to have a double meaning. Actually, Gusu Chiodi opened her mouth and seemed to want to say something. However, she only said 2 words and didn't say anything else. Regarding the Tao sect, Xiaohua and Zhai Xingzi could only stop at this point. Then, under Fu Jiwen's urging, Xueping roughly recounted the process of him finding the Misty Mountain Maze formation. Xiaohua carefully listened and analyzed at the side, but it was obvious that Xueping's experience was impeccable. Over 10 years ago, Xueping accidentally stepped on dog shit, allowing him to be extremely lucky and find a trace of the Misty Mountain Maze formation. Then, over 10 years of painstaking investigation proved an old saying, there's nothing in this world that's difficult for those who are willing. This ancient forbidden formation that even nascent soul cultivators couldn't find after racking their brains was actually found by Xueping and other cultivators of the 2nd and 3rd grade. Forget it? After Xueping finished speaking, Xiaohua waved his hand and looked at the extremely lucky Xueping, whose face was flushed red, and said, let's talk about what preparations you've made. Don't just prepare to break the formation empty-handed. Xueping's face was slightly red and he smiled apologetically, of course we've made some preparations. However, our strength is limited and our knowledge is shallow. Especially after we found out that this was the Misty Mountain Maze formation, we realized that our preparations were indeed insufficient. However, the preparations we've made over these years have been recorded in the Jade Eyes. Senior will understand after taking a look. Zhai Xingzi smiled and said, no matter, I've made some preparations myself. Moreover, the message talismans I sent to Master Sun Kong and Zhang Daoran also mentioned that they should have made some preparations. However, at this point, Zhai Xingzi smiled mysteriously and said, of course, I didn't know that this was the Misty Mountain Maze formation before coming here. Now that I know, there's still one more thing to prepare. Taoist Xiao, I'll have to trouble you to hold the fort here and wait for the 2 of you to arrive. I still have to make a trip out with Chiu, or... Xiaohua pondered for a moment and nodded, go ahead. Since we're going to enter the abode of an ancient tribulation transcending senior, no amount of caution is excessive. We have to consider all possibilities. I'm inexperienced in this aspect, so I'll have to trouble you for everything. After that, Zhai Xingzi and Gusuqiodi turned into rainbows and flew away. They didn't say when they would return. Xiaohua thought for a moment and wanted to contact Ao Zhantian and Shui Mingzi, who were also late nascent soul cultivators. However, he only thought about it for a moment before tossing it aside. After all, there was a huge difference between making friends with sincerity and being forced to swear loyalty. If the two of them had any ulterior motives in the ancient maze formation, it wouldn't be good for either of them. After Zhai Xingzi flew away, Xiaohua stayed in the quiet room and cultivated. Fujiwen finally had a great teacher and wanted to ask Xiaohua more. However, when he saw how hard-working Xiaohua was, he felt a little embarrassed. Fortunately, Xiaohua saw some clues and told Fujiwen that if he had any questions he could ask Fujiwen at any time. There was no need to be afraid of anything. Furthermore, Xiaohua spent 3 days examining Fujiwen's cultivation realm. Finally, to Fujiwen's astonishment, Xiaohua gave him the cultivation method for the heavenly tomes and array talismans in his body. Although it wasn't a complete system, it was enough to shock Fujiwen. This cultivation method that transcended Confucianism and Taoism allowed him to see his future. It was just as Baiyan had said. As long as he cultivated according to Xiaohua's instructions, his future realm would be limitless. Fujiwen was impressed by Xiaohua's strength, but he couldn't help but admire his wife's foresight. What a pity. Even so, Xiaohua still sighed. Although I have the art of array formations, I'm still lacking in simple and basic array formations. When I have the time in the future, I'll create some for you to study. Yes, thank you, master. After Fujiwen thanked him, he began to cultivate. Moreover, he followed Xiaohua's instructions and immediately asked for advice whenever he encountered a problem. He didn't dare to slack off. While Xue Ping and the others were envious of Fujiwen, they also discussed with each other. When they found out how Xue Ping befriended Xiaohua, they all gathered their courage and came to ask for advice. Xiaohua didn't dislike it. However, when he saw that they all wanted to come and ask for advice, he simply let them come along. As long as one of them had a problem, he would let everyone come and listen. This made everyone ecstatic. During this time, there were quite a few people who revealed that they wanted to become Xiaohua's disciple. Unfortunately, Xiaohua only smiled and didn't say anything. These people's aptitudes were all ordinary. It seemed like they weren't fated to be Xiaohua's disciples. Chapter 3709. Zhai Xingzi had been gone for several months and had not returned. This was within Xiaohua's expectations. After all, these two people had made a last-minute decision. Whether it was searching for a person or an item, it was not that simple. However, Sun Kong Shangren and Zhang Daoran, whom Xiaohua had sent a message to, had not come either, which made Xiaohua somewhat surprised. Sun Kong Shangren was not in Jingzhou, so it might be a bit of a journey. However, Zhang Daoran was in Jingzhou. With his flying speed, it was impossible for him to not appear for so long. Moreover, Xiaohua calculated that there was still some time before the auction that Zhang Daoran was hosting. Zhang Daoran would not delay the trip to the Forbidden Formation for the auction. Of course, when he thought of this, Xiaohua's heart thumped again. He had an ominous premonition. He was not afraid that the two of them would have any disloyalty. After all, they had gone through the trials of the Sun, Moon, and Star formations of the Jade Pavilion Conference. Xiaohua could still trust their characters. What Xiaohua was afraid of was that the news of Star-Lord Hall's Lord Kong Hongwu being killed by him would be leaked without him knowing. Star-Lord Hall's master being killed? This was definitely a matter of Star-Lord Hall turning the sky upside down. Moreover, Xiaohua also knew, this kind of matter would definitely be reported to the Immortal Palace. However, Xiaohua had been thinking for a long time and did not feel that he would give himself away. In particular, he had appeared in the Scorching Sun formation with serious injuries. How could he have the ability to kill a Confucian Great Grandmaster of the upper 5th grade of elemental energy? The most dangerous ones were the few nascent soul cultivators who watched him kill Jing Mubai. However, this was the most dangerous and also the safest evidence. Because he could kill Jing Mubai completely by scheming. The strength he showed was just at the lower 5th grade of elemental energy. There was still a big gap from the upper 5th grade of elemental energy. It was impossible for him to kill Kong Hongwu. Of course, there were many nascent soul cultivators who died in the Sun, Moon, and Star formation. Xiaohua did not know how many of them could survive, but in any case, Xiaohua felt that he was safe. As the saying goes, what you fear will happen. Just when Xiaohua carefully sorted out again and did not feel that there were any flaws and was preparing to meditate, Zhang Daoran and Sun Kong Shangren came with a dozen disciples with a somewhat gloomy face. Naturally, Xiaohua could not reveal that he was guilty. With a smile on his face, he greeted them and said, "Fellow Taoists, why did you come so late? I thought that the two of you didn't take my message to heart." No. Zhang Daoran forced a smile and said, "Back at Yaotai Mountain, this old man had already said that fellow Taoist Zhao's matter was my matter. Now that fellow Taoist sent a message, how could this old man not come? But suddenly, something happened. Also, didn't you say that you sent a message to Brother Sun Kong? This old man sent him a message and waited for him to come to Jingzhou before we came together." Something happened all of a sudden? Xiaohua naturally asked in surprise. What happened? Zhang Daoran looked at Venerable Sun Kong. Their eyes met as if the two had already discussed this along the way. Then Zhang Daoran waved his hand and said in a low voice, "Let's talk after we enter the cave." "All right." Xiaohua nodded and invited the two to land. Fu Jiwen and the others were already waiting in front of the cave. Normally, when Zhang Daoran and Venerable Sun Kong knew that Fu Jiwen was Xiaohua's disciple, they would definitely express something. But now, the two were absent-minded and only waved their hands as a greeting. They left the group of disciples outside the cave to exchange greetings and followed Xiaohua into the quiet room. After Zhang Daoran waved his hand and laid down the restriction, he glanced at Venerable Sun Kong again and asked Xiaohua very seriously, "Brother Xiao, tell this old man the truth. This time at the Yaotai Mountain gathering, did that person come?" Oh. Xiaohua first raised his eyebrows and then frowned. As Xiaohua expected, there were indeed rumors about Star-Lord Hall. But what puzzled him was that he did not understand who the person Zhang Daoran mentioned was. This. Xiaohua's reaction was not out of Venerable Sun Kong and Zhang Daoran's expectations. However, Zhang Daoran was slightly embarrassed, and Venerable Sun Kong could not help but ask, "Brother Xiao, are you really not that person's subordinate?" Xiaohua's heart moved, seeming to have thought of something. He said with a smile, "Fellow Taoists are talking about Hong Shu." Unexpectedly, just as Xiaohua said a word, Zhang Daoran hurriedly raised his hand, stretched out his index finger and placed it by his mouth, saying in a low voice, "Brother Xiao, this person's name can't be spoken carelessly. This old man has already reached the stage of reversing yin and yang. If we mention his name, he will sense it." Xiaohua pondered slightly, then wrote a large Hong on the table and said in a low voice, "Fellow Taoists, are you talking about this senior?" "That's right." Venerable Sun Kong and Zhang Daoran's expressions were somewhat strange. They both nodded and replied, "To be honest, ever since we returned from Yaotai Mountain, the more we thought about it, the more we felt it was strange. Because with Brother Zhao's cultivation, how could you not have a reputation in hidden immortal continent? Although Jing province is far from Yu province, it's not at the end of the world. I seem to have never heard of a cultivator in Yu province called Xiaohua. So fellow Taoists feel that I am this senior's disciple?" Xiaohua asked with a smile. Venerable Sun Kong nodded, "Exactly. Not only Brother Zhao's cultivation, even Brother Zhao's strength of character in the rockfall matrix is extremely similar to that legendary senior." "Special." Zhang Daoran stared at Xiaohua and asked again, "Before we returned to our respective caves, we received news from Yaotai Mountain. After the meeting at Yaotai Mountain, Star-Lord Hall completely sealed off Yaotai Mountain, unlike before where there were some decent ceremonies. Although Venerable Sun Kong and I don't know what happened at Yaotai Mountain, thinking about how strange it was when we came out, I feel that Star-Lord Hall has already undergone a great change." "So fellow Taoists feel that I am that senior's disciple? Moreover, you feel that senior also sneaked into Yaotai Mountain?" Xiaohua's eyes turned and he asked in reply. "If that's not the case, I really can't think of any other possibility." Zhang Daoran smiled bitterly. "On this hidden immortal continent, other than that senior, who else has this strength, who else has this courage, to dare to cause trouble on Yaotai Mountain?" Xiaohua laughed inwardly. The name of Grand Mist Ancestor was indeed useful. Even if he didn't use his name as a scapegoat, there would naturally be someone who would send him this so-called pillow. Xiaohua had the intention to insinuate that Grand Mist Ancestor had sneaked into Yaotai Mountain, but he still shook his head and answered honestly, "Fellow Taoists, to tell you the truth, before entering Yaotai Mountain, there was a Qingsu Taoist who came to find me, hoping that I would rely on this senior. However, I was somewhat hesitant and didn't agree. However, I also didn't refuse. After all, he was a Tao sect senior. If I could help, I would still help. Thus, I made some transactions with this Qingsu Taoist. However, if you say that I'm this senior's disciple, I absolutely don't dare to admit it. As for whether or not this senior took the opportunity to sneak into Yaotai Mountain, I don't know. At this point, Xiao Hua's heart was moved again. He wanted to ask about the background of this Grand Mist Ancestor. Moreover, on this hidden immortal continent, other than Grand Mist Ancestor, why did Zhang Daoran feel that there was no one who had the strength to kill Kong Hongwu, who was at the upper 5th grade of essence energy? However, Xiao Hua knew that he was facing a martial grandmaster who had cultivated for several thousand years, not an inexperienced Confucian scholar like Fu Jiwen. Although Zhang Daoran and Venerable Master Sun Kong spent most of their time cultivating, the saying that old people become shrewd wasn't nonsense. If he was slightly careless, he might give himself away even more. In the end, silence was gold. Venerable Master Sun Kong glanced at Zhang Daoran, nodded and said, "I feel that what Brother Xiao said is true. That cultivator called Qing Su also came to find me and promised me many benefits at the same time. It's just that I don't like restrictions, and the Yaotai gathering also has a unique treasure that I want. Therefore, like Brother Xiao, I only said some ambiguous words." Zhang Daoran let out a long sigh and shook his head slightly. "Master Qing Su didn't come to find me, but I heard about some of his actions after he got out. Since we Taoist cultivators know about these actions, then Confucian cultivators should know even more. It looked like the incident at Star-Lord Palace was caused by this old man. It should be a warning to the Immortal Palace and Confucian cultivators. The problem is," Xiao Hua continued to ask, "what happened to Star-Lord Hall? How should we deal with it?" "No one knows what happened to Star-Lord Hall. Perhaps only Star-Lord Hall's own Star-Lord and Hall Master can know." Zhang Daoran smiled slightly at this time. "What we need to do is the same as usual, just tuck our tails between our legs, that's all. However, we need to tuck our tails even tighter now to avoid being caught by Confucian cultivators. And the future of hidden immortal continent. I'm afraid there will be some storms." At this point, Zhang Daoran said apologetically, "Also, this old man has already sent a message to the auction that the three of us discussed. Push it back 10 years. I believe they will know about the news of Star-Lord Hall and understand our painstaking efforts." When Xiao Hua agreed, he was slightly distracted. Since Zhang Daoran's auction was postponed, what about him? Those Taoist cultivators who worked for him? Should he also inform them not to go to Black Wind Ridge for the time being? However, Sun Kong disagreed and sneered. "I don't think there's anything good about this. Since Star-Lord Hall's matter has nothing to do with you and me, we should do what we should do. Why should we care about what Confucian cultivators think? The more you avoid it, the more they will think that you have a guilty conscience. Moreover, Brother Xiao, you don't have to worry. Didn't you get the lot of the Imperial Preceptor in the Yaotai gathering? You should establish a country and kill Confucian cultivators. If you don't establish a country, the lot of the Imperial Preceptor can't be recorded in Star-Lord Hall. On the contrary, it will attract the attention of others." Chapter 37:10. That's right, that's true. When Xiao Hua heard this, he immediately had a plan in his heart. "I originally planned to return to Black Wind Ridge after exploring the ancient Forbidden Formation, but the information you two fellow Taoists had about Star-Lord Hall really scared me. Now that I've heard Brother Sun Kong's words, I'm suddenly enlightened. Since it has nothing to do with us, we don't have to worry about anything we do. If that Confucian cultivator wants to find trouble with us, he doesn't need to see if we've done anything. Forget it, forget it." Zhang Daoran waved his hand. "Since Brother Xiao isn't that senior's disciple, you naturally have nothing to do with this matter. We don't need to mention this anymore. Let's talk about this ancient Forbidden Formation." Hee. Xiao Hua smiled mysteriously and waved his sleeve. Several jade eyes appeared in front of them. "Take a look first. It'll definitely exceed your expectations." Sure enough, when their divine senses saw the jade eyes, both of them were greatly shocked, and it was even more so than Xiao Hua and Zhai Xingzi. Zhang Daoran even cried out involuntarily, "Why have I never thought that this cloudy mountain maze formation is actually within my Jing province?" Hee. Exalted Master Sun Kong laughed after recovering from his shock. "Brother Daoran, although you were ahead of me before the Jade Pavilion meeting, I'm confident that I'll be able to keep pace with you after the restriction formation." "Aha, I'm looking forward to it." Zhang Daoran also laughed. "Right, where's Zhai Xingzi?" Sun Kong only thought of Zhai Xingzi now. Where did that guy run off to? "I don't know." Xiao Hua shrugged. "Fellow Taoist Zhai Xing is so mysterious. I don't know if he's looking for someone or something. He disappeared with his lover." "Lover? When did that guy have a dual cultivation partner?" Sun Kong's eyeballs were about to fall out. That guy has always been arrogant and thinks he's on par with immortal emperors. How did he suddenly find a celestial empress? Haha, when he returns you two will naturally know. Xiaohua laughed. Zhang Daoran rubbed his nose and said strangely, Brother Xiao, not to mention that your luck is especially good. After this old man and Sun Kong met you, not only did we obtain two strange treasures, we even obtained the opportunity to enter the Misty Mountain Maze formation. Let's talk about your social relations. Zhai Xingzi usually doesn't associate with Taoism cultivators. How did you meet him? About this. Xiao Hua was slightly hesitant, and he thought for a moment before he said with a flattering smile, the reason for this is slightly related to a secret, so it's inconvenient for me to explain. Let's wait for fellow Taoist Zhai Xing to return and see what he has to say. Then I won't ask. Sun Kong said with a smile, I believe in Brother Zhao's character. Since you feel that old man Zhai Xing can get along with you, then I'll believe you for once. Let's go explore the cave abode of this tribulation-transcending senior. That. Zhang Daoran hastily called out to Sun Kong and handed him a jade eye. Brother Sun Kong, take a look at this. It seems like we should also go and make some preparations. Sun Kong took a look and exchanged glances with Zhang Daoran. However, this is Jing province. I'm not too familiar with Brother Xiao, so I'll have to trouble Brother Daoran. No problem. Zhang Daoran nodded. I'll go with my disciple to various places in Jing province to borrow some magic treasures from fellow Taoists that I'm familiar with. However, it's a bit impolite to ask my disciple to go to some places. If it's convenient, I'll write down the address in the jade eye. No problem, Sun Kong said with a smile. I still have some face. If Brother Daoran has something to say, feel free to say it. Xiao Hua waved his hand. Don't count me in. I can't differentiate between north, south, east, and west. Moreover, they might not recognize me. Since that's the case, Brother Xiao, stay here and carefully inspect these jade eyes. See if there's anything you missed out. Ancient forbidden formations aren't good places. Zhang Daoran agreed very straightforwardly. Then he and Sun Kong used 3 days to look through the contents of the jade eyes. After assigning their respective tasks, they hurriedly left with their disciples. Looking at Zhang Daoran and Sun Kong's orderly appearance, Xiao Hua's heart was even more at ease. This was the normal rhythm of entering an ancient forbidden formation. Previously he explored the secret area purely blindly, the rhythm of courting death. Xiao Hua sent Zhang Daoran and Sun Kong off. He used his hand to pinch his chin as he thought to himself, there's no other way. They've lived for so many years. They have to know more than I do. At this point, Xiao Hua already understood that he probably wouldn't enter the Misty Mountain Maze in a short period of time. He had the intention to go to Black Cloud Ridge, but he was afraid that the round trip would take too long. In the end, he simply didn't think about it. After all, Li Xiang was overseeing Black Cloud Ridge, and now there was also Xiong Yi's help. Both of them had the experience of ruling a country. Which one of them wasn't stronger than him? What he had to do was to raise his cultivation and be their strong backing. After Zhang Daoran and Sun Kong left for a few months, their disciples returned one after another. These disciples were all respectful to Xiao Hua and didn't conceal their whereabouts and gains. Among the 10 people, 7 of them completed their master's orders. It seemed like Zhang Daoran's reputation in Jingzhou was still rather great. Another half a month later, Zhang Daoran and Sun Kong also returned. Both of their expressions were slightly unsightly. Xiao Hua knew that the two of them didn't have a smooth journey and didn't ask much. He only smiled and said, I haven't seen the two of you return for so many days. I thought that the two of you had also become meat buns. Fortunately, the two of you are much stronger than Zhai Xingzi. Sun Kong was originally slightly displeased, but after hearing Xiao Hua's words, he was slightly stunned and asked curiously, What? Old ghost Zhai Xing hasn't returned yet? Could it be that this guy really fled at the last moment? Zhang Daoran waved his hand and said in disbelief, Impossible. Although Zhai Xingzi's starlight is arrogant, he has always been a man of his words. What he says is absolutely trustworthy. Perhaps, he's the same as us and has been refused entry. Sun Kong couldn't help but become infuriated when he heard this, and he said furiously, Motherfucker! Isn't it just borrowing a few magic treasures? What's so great about that? Wait until I come out from the Cloudy Mountain Maze formation. I'll deal with all of you one by one. Looks like things didn't go smoothly? Only at this moment did Xiao Hua ask with a grin on his face. Zhang Daoran laughed bitterly. Actually, it's nothing much. If it was a normal time, these fellow Taoists ought to be able to agree. But because of the matter of the Jadestage meeting, The situation in the hidden immortal continent is slightly subtle, and they don't dare arbitrarily get involved with us. Even though I participated in the Jadestage meeting, I didn't do anything, and I almost perished within the formation. Sun Kong spoke with slight indignation. Forget it, forget it. Xiaohua's eyes spun as he waved his hand and said, Fellow Taoists, what are the magic treasures that you didn't borrow like? Perhaps I have them here. Zhang Daoren naturally didn't believe what Xiaohua said, and he only took it as Xiaohua consoling himself, so he spoke of the might of the two magic treasures absent-mindedly. While Xiaohua listened carefully, he instructed the green-robed Xiaohua to search among the magic treasures that were still repaired, and further refine them. Zhang Daoren didn't care, but Sun Kong blinked his eyes and looked at Xiaohua thoughtfully, as if he had seen something. Subsequently, Zhang Daoren and Sun Kong took back the jade eyes, and brought their disciples Xue Ping and a few other cultivators to discuss the details of the inside. From time to time, they would send disciples to investigate several miles away. Until more than 20 days later, a divine sense swept over from afar, and an apologetic voice came, I came back late. I'm really sorry for the long wait. Mi Bun is back. Sun Kong withdrew his divine sense from the jade eyes, and as he spoke, he looked into the distance. Why did Zhai Xingzi bring back a Confucian cultivator? When Xiaohua heard this, he immediately understood that this Confucian cultivator wasn't invited by Zhai Xingzi, and must be a close friend of Gusu Qiudi. Of course, whether he was a Confucian cultivator or not, Xiaohua and the others had to come out to welcome him. When Zhai Xingzi and the others appeared, Xiaohua saw clearly and he couldn't help but frown because beside Zhai Xingzi, besides Gusu Qiudi, there was actually another beautiful woman. This woman looked a little thin and weak, and her clothes were a little fluttering on her body. This woman didn't have anything special except for her high forehead and two extremely bright eyes. However, the very arrogant expression on this woman's face was much stronger than Zhai Xingzi's. Xiaohua turned to look at Sun Kong and Zhang Daoren. In their eyes, besides puzzlement, there was vigilance, and it seemed that they didn't know this woman, and she didn't seem to be a famous disciple of the Jing province. Fellow Zhai Xing, you've worked hard. Zhang Daoren sensed Xiaohua's gaze, nodded slightly and stepped forward to bow. Previously, I had some conflict with you at the Jade Pavilion conference. Now that I think about it, it's not worth it. I apologize to you. Zhai Xingzi saw that Zhang Daoren actually went straight to the point to apologize and even bowed, and his expression changed greatly. He hurriedly landed in front of Zhang Daoren, helped him up and said, Brother Daoren, your words are too polite. The situation back then was different from now. You and I didn't know each other's positions. Moreover, if we're talking about apologizing, it should be me apologizing to Brother Daoren and Brother Sun Kong. I was bewitched by that brat Huoda, and I didn't want to join hands with you all. Instead, I attacked Brother Daoren and Brother Sun Kong. It's really my fault. Zhang Daoren's temperament was relatively calm, and he was very clear that when entering the bewildering formation together, trust between everyone was extremely important. Thus, he apologized as soon as they met. If this were to happen to Sun Kong, he definitely wouldn't do such a thing. On the other hand, Zhai Xingzi was the same. Now that Zhang Daoren was leading the way, Zhai Xingzi hurriedly stepped back and apologized. Sun Kong naturally understood the situation and stepped forward to bow. In this way, although the three late nascent soul grandmasters who each occupied a region couldn't be said to have buried the hatchet, this kind of harmony had never been seen before. At this moment, an extremely untimely cold snort sounded, and a somewhat mocking female voice sounded, How hypocritical! Think about it, not long ago you were enemies who fought to the death at the Jade Pavilion conference. How can you be so harmonious now? Can the conflict between life and death be resolved with a few words? Chapter 37:11. This immortal friend is? Zhang Daoren's expression did not change as he glanced at the girl and asked. Sun Kong, who was standing at the side, was a little angry. He glared at the woman. Zhai Xingzi's face was very awkward as he quickly smiled and said, This is my wife's good friend. Then Zhai Xingzi said to Gusu Qiudi, Qiu, why don't you introduce her? No need to trouble Qiu's sister. That girl was not polite as she looked at everyone and said, This one is Gong Shu Exen. Then she looked at Xiaohua and said proudly, You're Xiaohua, right? You look very ordinary. Also, you used 1,000 years to cultivate to 4th level middle stage. You can't be considered a talent. However, when I saw you hiding behind everyone and apologizing to them, I feel that you're just very good at hiding yourself. Then you reveal yourself when others are not paying attention. making others feel that you're very outstanding. So much so that Chio's sister was fooled by you and said a lot of good things about you in front of me. Looks like you're not worthy, ah. Yexan. Gusu Chiodi was very embarrassed. She did not care about anything else as she quickly stopped Gong Shui Exen and smiled to everyone. This Gong Shui Exen is my good friend. She comes from the Gongshu clan and is a famous array master. Gongshu clan is Gongshu clan, Gong Shui Exen is Gong Shui Exen. Chio's sister, how can you be so unscrupulous? Gong Shui Exen frowned and said with dissatisfaction. Could it be that you've been tainted by the secular world after being banished to the mortal world? Gusu Chiodi blushed and did not know how to answer. This question with a double meaning was really awesome, ah. Xiaohua rubbed his nose and smiled. This one is the Xiaohua you're talking about. Of course, this one does not know how Chio's sister praised this one does not care how others view this one. This one only cares about the 3 Dao friends of my Dao sect who were on par with each other and fought to the death in the Jade Pavilion gathering because of the Confucian cultivator's trap. Now that they saw their own shortcomings and knew their mistakes, they were brave enough to admit it. Even if these few simple words could not eliminate each other's wariness, but this is still an improvement. Although it's just a little bit, it's enough for them to sit together, enough for them to have the possibility of working together. What's the use of saying so much? These were all fake. Humans were selfish. When there was no conflict of interest, they could be closer than brothers. Once there was a conflict of interest, who would be able to stay true to their hearts? Who would be able to restrain their own selfish desires? Who can restrain their greed? Gong Shu Isin retorted without any trace of politeness. Xiaohua narrowed his eyes and looked at Gong Shu Exen. He said with a smile, Miss is very insightful and understands a lot. It's a pity, you've lost a lot because of this. Old Senior Xiao, save it. Gong Shui Exen said coldly, in this world there are too many hypocrites like you, that's why the world is so foul. If everyone was as magnanimous as me, how could there be so much trouble? Yexen, take a look. Gusu Chiodi raised her hand. It was the location of the Misty Mountain Maze. She smiled and said, that is the famous Misty Mountain Maze. No one has been able to break it for tens of millions of years. Come, I will accompany you to take a look. Hearing this, Gong Shui Exen's eyes lit up. She said anxiously, is that so? Right here? Let's go, sister will accompany me to take a look. Gusu Chiodi winked at Xiaohua and left with Gong Shui Exen. Xiaohua touched his nose helplessly and looked at Zhai Xingzi, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Zhai Xingzi, what's the matter with this girl? Sun Kong Shangren didn't care so much and shouted, if Daoist Xiao was not here, don't blame this old man for not giving face. Sorry. Zhai Xingzi knew he was in the wrong and hurriedly said with a smile, I believe Daoist Xiao has already told you 2 fellow Daoists. As soon as this old man arrived here, I heard this was the Misty Mountain Maze. I began to plan how to break this great formation. My humble wife transmitted that she knew a great formation master. This old man knew that our Dao sect's formation Dao had been lost for a long time. If we could find a great formation master, it would naturally be of great help to us. Therefore this old man didn't tell Daoist Xiao. I wanted to give everyone a surprise and went with my humble wife to find her. Unexpectedly, this lady Gongshu was really famous. There were many people begging her to break formations. She wouldn't meet with ordinary people. Because my humble wife was close friends with her, my humble wife was able to meet her. Unfortunately, when my humble wife met her, the Gongshu clan's clan head happened to have a clan order for her to help someone set up a formation. Naturally, she didn't dare to disobey the clan order. This old man and my humble wife could only accompany her. See, we were delayed after a round trip. However, this trip also broadened this old man's horizons. This Gongshui Xian's formation Dao is indeed formidable. That, a clan within 1,000 li radius was protected by her formation. In this old man's eyes, without the strength of mid-5th level origin energy, I'm afraid it's impossible to break through. Hiss. Sun Kong Shangren sucked in a breath and said in surprise, this little girl seems to only be mid-4th level origin energy. The formation she set up is actually so formidable? That's not the only thing that's formidable. Zhai Xingzi said with a smile, Brother Sun Kong, do you know why this little girl is so arrogant and doesn't put us late-stage nascent soul cultivators in her eyes? What? Even Zhang Daoran was curious in his heart. Because, Zhai Xingzi said in a low voice, this lady Gongshu is only around 600 years old this year. This. Zhang Daoran sucked in a breath of cold air. Sun Kong Shangren directly shouted, Damn it, how is that possible? This girl is only around 600 years old. If she's this old man's disciple, I'm afraid she hasn't even cultivated to spirit solitude yet? If her talent is better, she should be able to cultivate to mid-golden core stage. Zhai Xingzi said with a smile. When my humble wife told this old man was also shocked. This old man has never seen a cultivator who cultivates at such a godly speed. Jiji. Sun Kong Shangren laughed. You're Xiaohua right. You look very ordinary. Moreover, you used 1,000 years to cultivate to mid-4th level origin energy. You can't be considered a genius. Sun Kong Shangren's voice was still sharp, obviously imitating Gong Shu Exen. Hearing this, Zhai Xingzi laughed loudly. Even Zhang Daoran shook his head slightly. At this time, who still didn't know what Gusu Qiudi was thinking. She obviously praised Xiaohua like a flower, wanting to get Gong Shu Exen closer to Xiaohua. Who knew that she didn't even put Xiaohua in her eyes. Hee. Xiaohua didn't care. He touched his nose and said, actually, the most amazing thing is not this. What else is there? How do you know? Zhai Xingzi was very stunned. Soon after, he somewhat understood, and Taoist Xiao must have heard of Gong Shu Exen before. No, this Xiao has never heard of Lady Gongshu's name. Xiaohua said with a smile, today is the first time this Xiao has seen her. Then how do you know? Sun Kong Shangren was also very curious. Very simple. Xiaohua said with a smile, but those who are infatuated with the path of formation will inevitably have distractions and can't concentrate on cultivation. Yet this Lady Gongshu actually used 600 years of cultivation to reach mid-4th level origin energy. Moreover, her path of formation has reached large success. Normal talent is very difficult to reach. Right, that's exactly the case. Zhai Xingzi suddenly realized and nodded. No wonder when this old man praised her for her high cultivation at a young age, she was still somewhat disdainful. If Chiu wasn't beside me, she would definitely ridicule this old man. Ignorant of worldly affairs, only looking at one's heart, ignoring worldly affairs and concentrating on cultivation. Zhang Daoran also understood, it seems that there are gains and losses. She is a disciple of the Gongshu family. Her starting point is different from ours. Even if she has flaws on her body, it doesn't count for much in the eyes of others. Sun Kong Shangren smiled coldly. Xiaohua blinked his eyes and said thoughtfully, isn't this what the people of the secular world say? A white face covers 100 ugliness? Aha, this girl is not only white but also not ugly. Sun Kong Shangren laughed loudly. The group of disciples standing at the side also couldn't help but laugh. Let's go, we should also go take a look at the Great Formation. Xiaohua knew that Sun Kong Shangren was teasing him, but he didn't care. Fellow Taoist has already reached this level. Even if they don't become sworn brothers, what difference is there between them? Good, let us also take a look at this Gongshu family girl's methods. Zhai Xingzi extended his hand and invited Zhang Daoran to go first. Zhang Daoran thought for a moment, nodded at everyone and flew up first. He was the oldest, and his cultivation had also reached the peak of the late nascent soul stage. Not counting Xiaohua's methods, just looking at Xiaohua's cultivation, it was reasonable for Zhang Daoran to be the leader. Fellow Taoists, please go first. Xiaohua saw Zhang Daoran fly up and said with a bitter smile, I was just ridiculed by the little girl, so I'll look for confidence from fellow Taoist. Aha, Taoist is already not bad. Zhai Xingzi smiled. Seeing that Sun Kong Shangren didn't move, he cupped his hands and flew up with Zhang Daoran. Sun Kong Shangren waited for Zhai Xingzi to leave, then smiled and followed behind. Xiaohua flew at the back. In this way, the position of the 4 Taoists of the hidden immortal continent was confirmed. The group of cultivators did not release their divine sense. After flying for several li, they saw a huge mountain that looked like a steamed bun covering an area of 100 li. The mountain was covered with strange rocks, and there were small bumps that looked like stone chains tied to the mountain peak. Looking at the bottom of the mountain, they saw a meandering river rushing into the mountain peak from one end, then rushing out from the other side. It made a few twists and turns at the foot of the mountain, then plunged back into the mountain peak. When it came out again, it was on the other side of the mountain. After a few more twists and turns, a huge river surrounded the entire mountain peak on the ground. There were some green trees on the mountain, and they were scattered very unevenly. Similarly, there were also some thorns mixed with these green trees. Occasionally, some strange hissing sounds would come from somewhere in the mountain, but when they looked, they didn't see any wild beasts. Chapter 37:12. Similarly, the river at the edge of the mountain continued to flow, but there was a hint of green fluorescence in it. There were no fish or aquatic plants to be seen. At the riverside there were also fist-sized cobblestones. Each one was smoother than the next, shining under the sunlight. Aquatic plants that were usually seen at the riverside were nowhere to be seen here. Only a few thousand feet away from the riverside, there were sparse aquatic plants and moss. Only then did some tiny grasshoppers and other small things become active. The mountain looked a little strange, but when one's divine sense swept out, there were no fluctuations of magic power. Even the chi of heaven and earth was no different from other places. There were no signs of condensation. Furthermore, at the far end of the mountain, there was a large forest. The trees were lush and the wind blew. It was full of vitality. Apart from the place where Xiaohua and the others came from, there was a large flat area that was several li wide. On the other side of the mountain there were even taller mountain ranges. It seemed that those two mountain ranges were precipitous and had strange peaks that were even more imposing than this mountain. When Xiaohua and the others arrived, Gusuchiodi and Gongshu Isin weren't near them. They probably went to the side to explore. Xiaohua and the others didn't mind. Zhang Daoran looked to the left, then turned to Xueping and the others and said, "After I got your jade eyes, I studied it carefully. I found that your opinions were not unanimous. Some said this was the Four Gates Dragon Binding Formation, some said it was the Milky Way Spirit Sealing Formation, and some said it was the Gold Water Flat Hill Formation. Now that we are going to break the formation, we have to understand the formation first." Xueping said respectfully, "Senior, please know that I was the first to arrive at this place according to the map. However, I'm not well versed in the Tao of array formations. Based on the trajectory of the mountain and the few jade eyes I have, I discovered that the ridges on the mountain are like chains. Furthermore, the mountain is above the water, which is very similar to the Four Gates Dragon Binding Array passed down in ancient times. As for the other formations, they are the opinions of the other Taoists. Of course, I know that our cultivation is shallow and our knowledge is even more limited. These things are recorded in the jade eyes for reference. It's nothing." And Zhang Daoran nodded, then looked towards Zhai Xingzi and Xiaohua, asking, "Fellow Taoists, what do you think?" Zhai Xingzi smiled and said, "I've thought about it before and I've even looked at the terrain here. But now that the formation master of the Gongshu family is here, I'd better not embarrass myself." "Ah, that's right." Xiaohua also said with a smile, "Everyone has their shortcomings and strengths. The matter of breaking the array should be left to Miss Gongshu." When Zhang Daoran was about to speak, Sun Kong waved his hand and said, "Although the girl from the Gongshu family is a formation master, all she knows is origin formations. We are Dao sect cultivators and Senior Tsonglongzi's cave is also a Dao sect formation. Even if we listen to the girl's opinion, we can't embarrass the Dao sect. We still have to say what we want to say. This old man had some misgivings earlier. Now I'm going to take a closer look. When I find something I'll discuss it with you." "All right." Zhang Daoran nodded. "This old man will go with you." Then he said to Xiaohua, "Brother Xiao, follow fellow Taoist Zhai Xing to find the girl from the Gongshu family." Xiaohua thought for a moment and said, "That girl is obviously disgusted with me. I'd better not provoke her. Fellow Taoist Zhai Xing can go by himself." "Fine." Zhai Xingzi knew that Gusuchiodi helped Xiaohua and felt a little self-defeating. He smiled and said, "This old man will go by himself. Spiritual master, take these disciples and stand guard by the side." After saying that, the three of them flew away. Xiaohua said to Xueping and the others, "Let's go. Take this old man and take a look at this large array." "Yes." Xueping and the others were very respectful. They took Xiaohua from the foot of the mountain and explored bit by bit. As they walked, they explained to Xiaohua and took out the jade eyes from time to time to explain. At first, Xiaohua only nodded slightly and didn't speak, as if he didn't know anything about arrays. However, after half a meal, when Xueping pointed to a place and explained his array, Xiaohua opened his mouth and pointed to that place to refute Xueping. He also began to explain the method of setting up the array in simple terms. Although Xiaohua only spoke to Fujiwen, Xueping and the others heard him clearly. At first, other than Fujiwen who listened carefully, the others didn't care. However, gradually, a few cultivators who had studied the large array in depth, including Xueping, began to change their expressions. Their faces became more respectful and admiring. They compared the jade eyes and the large array's problems with Xiaohua's explanation and solved them one by one. Although the other cultivators didn't understand the Tao of arrays, they knew that Xiaohua also knew about arrays. They hurriedly listened attentively, unwilling to let go of this rare opportunity. Xiao Hua led the group of cultivators and explained as they flew. He also asked the cultivators who had studied the array to share their opinions. Although the mountain was only 50 kilometers in size, it took a lot of time to fly around. However, when the group of cultivators flew back to their original place, they still didn't see Zhai Xingzi or Zhang Daren's summons. Xiao Hua understood that Gongshu Yisin and Sun Kong must have encountered a difficult problem and didn't dare to easily break the array. In fact, although Xiao Hua himself taught Fujiwen and the others a lot of the Tao of arrays based on this large array, it had nothing to do with breaking the array. He himself was also confused about this large array. This was a large array set up by a cultivator who had passed the tribulation. How could it be easy to break? Fujiwen, according to what I said, take a look at it yourself. This kind of ancient forbidden array is really hard to come by. It's a good opportunity. Xiao Hua waved his hand. It's quite difficult to get started with the Tao of arrays, but you have the foundation after all. Now that you've combined it with this large array, you'll be able to grasp it well. Of course, what I said is only my understanding. It's only a general explanation of the array and the array collected by Xue Ping and the others. It's still very far from breaking the array. Or to put it bluntly, I'm just drawing on gourds and ladles. What I said has nothing to do with the real Misty Mountain Maze array. Do you understand? Yes, this junior understands. Fu Jiwen replied respectfully. Senior, you're just stringing together the Tao of arrays that Xue Ping and the others found. It has nothing to do with the Misty Mountain Maze array. This junior doesn't dare to rashly break the array based on what I just learned. It's good that you understand. Xiao Hua nodded and motioned for Fu Jiwen to comprehend it himself. Xue Ping and the others were well aware of this and bowed to Xiao Hua. Thank you, senior. Then they flew to various places and combined what Xiao Hua said to verify what they had learned. Their previous thoughts were very simple. No matter what kind of array it was, they just needed to break it. However, now that they saw a late-stage nascent soul senior being so serious and not daring to casually make a move, they rejoiced even more. Xiao Hua flew into the sky and scanned with his divine sense. As expected, Gongshu Xin in front of him was frowning. She raised her right index finger and gently scratched her nose. A faint silver light flashed between her eyes. It was obvious that she had some unresolved questions. Looking to the right, Venerable Master Sun Kong had already released Chang'an. The monkey was also flying in the air, its eyes flashing with brilliance. Its long tail shook slightly in the air. The monkey flew to one place after another, not staying for long at any place. Venerable Master Sun Kong's expression was somewhat unsightly. Zhai Xingzi saw Xiao Hua flying over and was about to come over. Xiao Hua waved his hand at him and transmitted his voice. Fellow Taoist, you don't have to come over. I'll go take a look too. Oh? Taoist knows about arrays too? Zhai Xingzi was a little surprised, but he didn't move. Xiao Hua smiled. I know a little, but compared to the Gongshu family's girl, I'm still lacking a lot. Seeing Xiao Hua fly away, Zhai Xingzi's expression changed. He transmitted his voice to Gusu Qiudi. When Gusu Qiudi heard that Xiao Hua also knew about arrays, she couldn't help but be stunned. She took a few more glances at Xiao Hua's back. Clearly, the impression Xiao Hua gave her was even more mysterious. Meanwhile, Xiao Hua flew to the other side of the mountain. He raised his hand and patted. It was really between his eyebrows. He saw that the delusion breaker Dharma eye was flashing with a dark green halo. The Dharma eye gradually opened, and the silver-white pupils were revealed without any emotions. When the Dharma eye saw the situation in front of him, Xiao Hua couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. He saw that below him an oval-shaped light circle was flashing with a faint golden and green brilliance. Vaguely, there were some words flashing within the golden brilliance and green brilliance. However, Xiao Hua's Dharma eye couldn't distinguish them clearly. Moreover, this golden and green brilliance was very restrained. There wasn't even a trace of ripples spreading out. There was even a slightly black fog blocking the surface of the brilliance. However, this fog was extremely thin, as if it was transparent. Not only that, outside of this fog, there were chain-like brilliances that crisscrossed and bound the entire chicken. These chains not only blocked the golden and green brilliance, but also locked the fog. Opposite these chains, there was a thin and long green belt of light. It pierced through a section of the chicken like a needle piercing through a seam. Within the halo, it pierced through the chicken where the chains weren't. The chains were outside, the belt of light was inside. The chains didn't move and the belt of light flowed. They seemed to really complement each other, imprisoning the entire chicken on the ground. Damn it, what kind of array is this? Xiao Hua was somewhat dumbfounded. How do I break it? After looking for a while, Xiaohua still didn't have any clue. However, his heart was moved again. His figure began to fly, flying in the direction of the golden and green brilliance. After waiting for an hour, the corners of Xiaohua's mouth revealed a smile. He secretly said in his heart, as expected. When Xiaohua was about to go to the side to take a look, Zhai Xingzi's voice transmitted to his ear. What did Reverend see? If you didn't find anything, please turn back. Gong Shuisin already knows how to break it. Oh, this little girl is really powerful. Xiaohua agreed, secretly thinking in his heart. When Xiaohua flew back, Sun Kong Shangren and the others were already standing around Gong Shuisin, clustered around her like stars surrounding the moon. Chapter 37:13. Gong Shui Xian's face was a little red, and her sparkling eyes showed a kind of excitement. Apparently she had found her favorite thing. Gong Shui Xian saw Xiaohua fly back and asked with a smile, Senior Xiao, what did you find? Gong Shui Xian's words didn't have any malice, but it was absolutely harsh in the ears of others. Xiaohua looked at this proud girl and knew that she was loved by all. He wouldn't lower himself to her level. He smiled and replied, I didn't see anything. Even if I did, it's just some stupid opinions. Why don't I listen to Miss Gongshu's opinion first? Then what about Senior Sun Kong? Gong Shui Xian's lips curled up slightly, but it was a smug smile that wasn't easily noticed by others. She looked away from Xiaohua and turned to ask Sun Kong Shangren. The corner of Sun Kong Shangren's right eye twitched slightly. Apparently he was a little unhappy. If it was an ordinary disciple, Sun Kong Shangren would have already taught him a lesson. However, although Gong Shui Xian was a little arrogant, she came to help after all. Zhai Xingzi was standing next to her. Even if Sun Kong Shangren was angry, he couldn't vent it on this Confucian Jr. Sun Kong Shangren glared fiercely at Zhai Xingzi, who was standing next to Gong Shui Xian with an obsequious smile. He rolled his eyes and said with a smile, Little girl, this old man is not proficient in the art of formations. I just happened to obtain an ancient jade slip 1,000 years ago, which roughly explained the mysteries of formations. Unfortunately, even so, I can't understand it with my talent. As for why I stepped forward to explore this Jade Mountain formation, it was because of my beast pet. Sun Kong Shangren proudly patted the spirit monkey Changgung next to him. My Changgung was born with the ability to see through the void. He can see through many formations. You? Gong Shui Xian blushed. She really couldn't compare to Sun Kong Shangren in terms of cunning. Even if she wanted to refute, she couldn't. Because as soon as she opened her mouth, she would be on the same level as Sun Kong Shangren's Changgung. However, Gong Shui Xian wasn't going to give up easily. She rolled her eyes and said with a smile, Elder Sun Kong, Jr. seems to have heard that there is a Tai Bai Jinxing immortal official called Changgung in the Immortal Palace. How come your demon pet has the same name as him? If he knew about this, he would definitely fly into a rage, right? Ha ha ha. Unexpectedly, Sun Kong Shangren was simply a troublemaker. He was not afraid at all. He stroked Changgung's small head and laughed loudly. Changgung, when did you go to the Immortal Palace to be a high official? Why didn't I know about it? In a flash, Gong Shui Xian understood that Sun Kong Shangren deliberately named his demon pet Changgung in order to humiliate the Confucian immortal cultivator in the Immortal Palace. It would be fine if Tai Bai Jinxing didn't know, but if he told Tai Bai Jinxing, what would Tai Bai Jinxing do? Perhaps at that time, Tai Bai Jinxing would not be angry at Master Sun Kong, but himself. Gong Shui Xian was not stupid, but she had seen through a lot of the ways of the world. Once she understood, she fell into an awkward situation again. Fortunately, Gusuchiodi hurriedly said with a smile, Fellow immortal Sun Kong, quickly tell us what you found. It wasn't me who found it, it was my Changgung who found it. Exalted Master Sun Kong had a smile on his face as he emphasized again. Then he pointed at the spot that Changing had been looking at and said, Xue Ping and company's guesses are basically correct. However, they don't understand array formations after all. They are only following the picture and can only see the surface and one-sided. According to Changgung's observation, there are two formations fused together. One of them should be the famous Nine-Dragon Bone battle. Take a look. The ridges on this mountain are made up of 9 dragon souls. Senior Tsang Longzi condensed them into chains to seal the entire formation. If we can't break the 9-dragon bone battle, we won't be able to reveal the cave. What else? Gong Shui Xian asked with a smile as if she had a card up her sleeve. Sun Kong Shangren looked at the smile and immediately understood the meaning behind it. However, since he had already said it and used Changgung's name, he was not afraid of making a fool of himself. Then he pointed at the Long River and said, "This Long River is similar to Xueping's observation. It's also a formation. If I'm not wrong, it should be the 9 demon subduing formation. However, this formation is a hidden one, which should complement the 9 dragon bone battle formation. One is bright and one is dark, one is yin and one is yang. If we want to show Senior Longzi's cave residence, we have to break the 2 formations at the same time. If we break one first, the other formations will counterattack. Of course, if we can't break any of the formations, the yin and yang formations will counterattack together, which will be more powerful. Presumably, the vision recorded in the Jade Eyes is that we can't break the formations at the same time and cause the formation to counterattack." Clap clap. Before Zhang Daoran and the others could speak, Gong Shui Exan clapped her hands and said, "Senior Sun Kong is indeed amazing. You really saw through this formation." Hee little girl. Hearing Gong Shui Exan's praise, Sun Kong Shangren didn't look happy at all. He said faintly, "You should say the but first." As expected, Gong Shui Exan continued, "But you only saw through 30 to 40% of the formation. If you break the formation, I'm afraid we won't have any chance to enter." 30 to 40%? Not to mention Sun Kong Shangren, even Zhai Xingzi and the others were shocked. If what Gong Shui Xian said was true, the 9 Dragon Bone Lock formation and the 9 Demon Subduing formation were only 30 to 40%, then didn't that mean there were still 2 or 3 other formations? They had never heard of a formation that could combine 4 great formations into one. Gusuchiodi was also surprised. "EXNR, are you sure you saw it correctly?" "Hee Sister Chiu, my Gongshu family's silver moon eyes are not inferior to the Immortal Palace's golden eyes. If I can't see it, who can?" Gongshu Exian replied proudly. "That's true." Gusuchiodi nodded. Sister's clear eyes technique didn't seem to be able to see anything. "But," Gongshu Exian raised her voice, "Seniors, before I break the formation, I want to make it clear that when Sister Chiu invited me, I didn't ask for anything. It's not that I don't have any requests, I just want to see if I can break the formation. Now that I'm sure I can break the formation, I'll first discuss the conditions with you seniors." Zhang Daoren nodded. "Lady Gongshu, please state your conditions. As long as they are reasonable, we'll agree." "I have 2 conditions." Gongshu Exen replied confidently. "First, I have the right to choose first from the items in Senior Longzi's cave residence." "Oh." Sun Kong Shangren sneered. "Senior Longzi is a Taoist senior. The items inside are all Taoist treasures. You're a Confucian disciple. What do you want them for?" "Yes, Sun Kong Shangren's opinion is also our opinion." Xiaohua nodded. Since Xiaohua had spoken, Zhai Xingzi also smiled and said, "Miss Gongshu, this old man knows that you don't care about the difference between Confucianism and Taoism, so this old man won't hide it from you. One of the reasons why we entered Senior Longzi's Immortal's cave was to obtain his orthodoxy." "Yes, I understand." Gongshu Exan interrupted Zhai Xingzi impolitely, but it was this interruption that revealed her determination to enter the cave residence. Gongshu Exan said, "In that case I can take a step back. Except for the Taoist cultivation method Jade Slips, I want the right to choose first." "How about this?" Xiaohua said, "You can choose first from the formation items. As for the other items, you don't have to take first." "Fine." Although Gongshu Exan was arrogant, she was also straightforward. She nodded. "Then I'll talk about the second condition." "How many conditions do you have?" Zhang Daoren frowned and asked. "Just these 2. "Good, please." Zhang Daoren saw Xiaohua's calmness and was relieved. "The second condition is, in addition to the cultivation method, I want 50% of the treasures, medicinal pills, formations and other items." Gongshu Exian's bright eyes curved into crescents. She knew her conditions were harsh, but Zhang Daoren and the others had to agree. Sure enough, Zhang Daoren heard this and felt bitter. The reason was obvious. Without Gongshu Exin, they couldn't break the formation and enter the cave residence. But even if he allowed Gongshu Isin to break the formation with her cultivation level, she wouldn't be able to do it. The ones doing the work would still be the Taoist cultivators themselves. They put in a lot of effort, but a bossy Confucian cultivator took half of it. Zhang Daoren couldn't accept it. Zhang Daoren didn't want to agree, but other than Gongshu Exin, who could break the formation? No. Exalted Master Sun Kong immediately spoke and pointed at Xueping and the others. Senior Longzi's cave abode was discovered by these Dao sect disciples, so they should have 20% of the items inside. We should take 60% while the remaining 20% belongs to you. Hee, then I'll have to ask all of you seniors to break the formation yourselves. I still want to live to see the sun rise tomorrow. Gong Shu Exn didn't have any intention of bargaining and said with a smile. How about this? Gusuchiodi naturally stepped forward and said with a smile, EXN, I don't want my share. You take 30%. After all, Senior Daoran and Daoist Xiao are the main force. Without them, even if you know the method, you can't break the formation, right? Says who? Gong Shu Exn retorted, my Gong Shu clan has no lack of 4th or 5th level cultivators. As long as there's an ancient maze formation here, it's easy to call a few over. Chapter 37:14. Xiaohua heard Gong Shu Exin's tone and felt a bit better. He didn't know if he cared about Gusuchiodi's face or if he met his own expectations. He thought for a bit and said, Miss Gong Shu, if you want to invite Gong Shu family cultivators, I think you should invite some 6th level essence energy cultivators. If those 5th level upper level Confucian cultivators come, even if they suppress the 2 outer formations, they won't be able to stop the inner formation's attack. They won't be able to see tomorrow's sun. Gong Shu Exin's expression changed. She almost shouted in disbelief. You, how did you know? It doesn't matter how I know, what I care about is. Xiaohua said faintly, if you don't agree to this 30%, we'll have to break the formation ourselves. At that time you won't even get 30%. If I can't get it then I can't. Gong Shu Exn snorted, you just saw through the flaws, I don't believe you can. Hee. Gusuchiodi quickly laughed. EXN is joking, since you can see through the flaws, isn't it just right to help EXN break the formation? Everyone can study the formation together, isn't that better? EXN, tell me what you found out. Elder Xiao first. Gong Shu Exn thought for a bit and nodded, but she still looked at Xiaohua angrily. Xiaohua smiled and stretched out his hand. Shrugging his shoulders he said, this old man didn't say that he saw any flaws. This is what the young lady said. I was just guessing. You. Gong Shu Exn was so angry she almost vomited blood. She said everything herself. Xiaohua didn't say how she knew there was an origin formation inside. I don't believe you, you didn't see it, how do you know there's an origin formation inside? At this time, Gong Shu Exn was no different from a little girl who was vindictive. She completely exposed the purity of her cultivation. Xiaohua said, what's so hard about that? Song Longzi was a tribulation senior. This formation had been attacked by Confucian cultivators, Buddhist cultivators and demon cultivators, but it had not been broken. Obviously, Song Longzi was a master of formations. It would not be strange if the defensive formation he had set up had 3 or 4 layers, let alone 2. Even if there are origin formations, Buddhist formations and demonic formations inside, this old man wouldn't be surprised. This old man only said that there's an origin array inside, what's there to be surprised about? You. Gong Shu Exn was completely speechless. Xiaohua's words were really not wrong. He didn't need any special silver moon eyes. He could guess it just by thinking about it. Of course, there was an essential difference between seeing and guessing. The problem was that she had mixed up what she saw with what Xiaohua had guessed. She thought that Xiaohua had also discovered it, which was why she had given in. You stinky men only know how to bully us weak women. Gusuchiodi smiled and pulled Gong Shu Exin's arm. Don't lower yourself to the same level as these men. Quick, show them what you found and let them know the power of us women. Also teach them what it means to be a woman who is not inferior to a man. Gusuchiodi's words were obviously biased towards an outsider. Gong Shu Exn was straightforward but not an idiot. Of course she could hear it. But she also knew that this was a way out and she should take advantage of it. Thinking for a moment, Gong Shu Exn fiercely glared at old Senior Xiao and pointed with her finger. It's exactly as old Senior Xiao guessed. This guessed was very heavy. Moreover, Xiaohua's face that was stared at by the Gong Shu family's Silver Moon Eyes secret technique twitched slightly as if he was stung by a wasp. Speaking of formations, Gong Shu Exin seemed to have changed into a different person. She was no longer arrogant, willful, or haggling. Instead, her face was full of excitement as if she would be happy even if you didn't give her a single primordial stone. She pointed with her finger and said, this formation is divided into 2 layers as old Senior Xiao guessed. The outer layers are 2 Taoist formations. However, they are not the 9 Dragons Bone Lock formation and the 9 Yin Exorcism formation, but the Shenqing Spirit Forbidding Formation and the Blue Sky Spring Formation. The two formations that old senior Sun Kong mentioned are similar to the two formations that I mentioned, but there are essential differences. The Nine Dragons Bone Lock Formation is a defensive formation, while the Nine Yin Exorcism Formation is a suppressing formation. Old senior Tsang Longzi wouldn't place the Nine Yin Exorcism Formation outside his cave residence to suppress himself, right? Sun Kong blinked his eyes and didn't say anything. The Shenqing Spirit Forbidding Formation and the Blue Sky Spring Formation are different. They are both offensive formations. People often say that the strongest defense is offense. Old senior Tsang Longzi must know this very well. Of course, one of these two formations is in the light and the other is in the dark. It's just as old senior Sun Kong said. Gong Shu Yisun continued, however, the difference between the Shenqing Spirit Forbidding Formation and the Nine Dragons Bone Lock Formation is that the Spirit Forbidding Formation doesn't have a dragon vein inside. Instead, it imprisons a formation spirit. With this formation spirit, the entire formation isn't static. It's constantly changing, making it unpredictable and impossible to break. The most amazing thing is that the Emerald Spring Formation is a concealment formation. The Emerald Spring Formation is the softest of Yin. It is also invisible and ever-changing. I can't be sure if there is a formation spirit in the Emerald Spring Formation, but even if there is only one formation spirit, the two formations complemented each other and were equivalent to three independent formations. Formation spirit? Xiaohua frowned. What's that? Is it a formation spirit? No. Gong Shu Yisun shook her head. Formation spirit? That's just a legend. Not to mention this one doesn't know about it, even my Gong Shu family, and even the Confucian inheritance have never had this kind of formation spirit. The formation spirit I'm talking about is the demon spirit, living soul, or beast soul imprisoned inside the formation. These formation spirits can not only increase the flexibility of the formation, but the more powerful the formation spirit is, the more powerful the formation will be. Oh, I see. Xiaohua understood. Then what's the origin formation I'm talking about? Gong Shu Yisun rolled her eyes at Xiaohua and said, in addition to the two Taoist formations outside the Misty Mountain Maze Formation, there are two more formations inside. What? Zhai Xingzi was shocked. Two origin formations. No, one is an origin formation and the other is a Buddhist formation. Gong Shu Yisun shook her head. However, my silver moon eyes are not strong enough. I can only see the origin formation and the Buddhist formation from the flaws of the two Taoist formations. I can't tell what kind of formations they are for now. Only after we break the two Taoist formations can I begin to break these two formations. But, seniors don't worry about the origin formation. Senior Tsang Longzi is a Taoist senior after all. This one has some confidence in breaking his origin formation. Girl, didn't you say it just now? If we don't break the two formations inside at the same time, when we break the two outer formations, will we be attacked by the two inner formations? Sun Kong Shangren frowned and asked, why do we have to wait until the end? Gong Shu Yisun nodded. If the inner formation is a Taoist formation, this one can't do anything about it. But since it's a Confucian origin formation, this one has confidence that it won't be activated. Xiaohua nodded. What he saw was similar to what Gong Shu Yisun saw, but he saw it more clearly. Thinking for a moment, Xiaohua looked at Sun Kong Shangren and said a few words through voice transmission. Sun Kong Shangren frowned and looked at Xiaohua with surprise. He waved his hand and Chang Gung flew out to a place in the formation. At this time, Gong Shu Yisun frowned and said, but Tsang Longzi's Misty Mountain Maze formation is very strange. This one has a question. I've been thinking about it for a long time, but I still can't figure it out. Since we're going to break the formation together, this one will be frank with you seniors. What's so strange about it? Zhang Daoren asked. As the saying goes, flowing water doesn't rot and the pivot doesn't rust. The ordinary blue sky spring formation uses the cold living spring of the 9 underworlds, but the spring water of this Misty Mountain Maze formation is obviously not the 9 underworlds in water, so the formation's power is reduced a lot. Also, if it weren't for the jade eyes of the seniors who knew about the Misty Mountains Maze formation, I wouldn't have been able to see through it with my clear eyes technique. This Misty Mountain Maze formation conceals its magic power and noble spirit very well. There's not a trace of it outside the surface. What's so strange about it? Zhai Xingzi asked curiously. Of course it's strange. Gong Shu Yisun smiled. We Confucian cultivators need to absorb noble spirit into our bodies. You seniors also need to absorb heaven and earth yuan qi to refine your bodies, right? It's the same for origin formations and magic formations. Without noble spirit in heaven and earth Yuan Qi, these magic formations and origin formations can't last long, not to mention this misty mountain maze formation is from ancient times. What do you mean? Xiao Hua's heart also moved as he thought of a possibility. From what this one knows, this misty mountain maze formation must have an inner layer. This inner layer can absorb heaven and earth Yuan Qi and noble spirit. Gong Shu Yisin nodded, especially Senior Tsang Longzi handled this inner layer very well. Even if there are fluctuations of magic power and noble spirit, it won't be noticed by others. How is that possible? Zhai Xingzi shook his head. As long as there are fluctuations, it will be noticed by others. Fellow Zhai Xingzi. Xiao Hua was now somewhat convinced by Gong Shu Yisin. Didn't Miss Gong Shu just say? Flowing water doesn't rot, the pivot doesn't rust. When will the fluctuations and noble spirit not be noticed? Naturally, it's when heaven and earth Yuan Qi or noble spirit flows. Zhai Xingzi's eyes brightened as if he had thought of something. That's right. Just when everyone was shocked, Gong Shu Yisin said proudly, Senior Tsang Longzi is your Taoist sex formation master. How can his cave be discovered so easily? The array formation of the old man's cave abode? Or rather, the old man's cave abode should be mobile under the activation of the array formation. It's not fixed in one place. Chapter 37:15. That's right. Hearing this, Zhai Xingzi slapped his thigh and exclaimed, That's right, that cloudy mountain maze formation should be at Yongzhou's cloudy mountain. How could it run to Jingzhou? Xue Ping and the others were thoroughly convinced. They had never understood why the cloudy mountain maze formation would be in Jingzhou. Moreover, so many Taoist and Confucian cultivators were searching for it, how could it be found by small cultivators like them? So the maze formation could move. Gong Shu Yisin's words immediately revealed the answer to this mystery. Actually, Senior Tsang Longzi's cave abode probably wasn't called Cloudy Mountain Maze Formation before. It was probably discovered when it first appeared in Yongzhou's Cloudy Mountain, so it was named after it. Gong Shu Yisin looked puzzled. What I'm puzzled about is that based on the current situation, Senior Tsang Longzi's cave abode doesn't show any signs of moving. This situation has been going on for at least 10 years. Otherwise, with Xue Ping and the others' cultivation, it's very unlikely that they'd discover this cave abode. Xiao Hua nodded. Gong Shu Yisin's puzzlement perfectly explained why Xue Ping was so lucky to discover this cloudy mountain maze formation. He probed, Brother Daoran said earlier that time is the best method to crack all great formations. Perhaps it's because the array outside Senior Tsang Longzi's abode is too old, and it's hard for the array to not be damaged as it moves. Today, the array can no longer support itself, so it stopped here. What Senior Xiao said is the most likely possibility. Gong Shu Yisin nodded. I can't see the situation inside the cave abode, so I can only guess. Let's not worry about this for now. Zhang Daoran smiled. Miss, since you've analyzed the formation so clearly, do you have a way to crack it? That's right. Master Sun Kong also asked. This great formation was baptized by many experts in the past, but none of them could break it. How confident are we? 60%. Gong Shu Yisin smiled very confidently. Girl, you're bragging. Master Sun Kong laughed. 60% is basically enough to crack it. Senior Sun Kong. Gong Shu Yisin smiled. What is recorded in the Jade Eye is the situation when Senior Tsang Longzi was meditating in the cave. At that time, the formation was controlled by Senior Tsang Longzi. It is very different from the current one. In terms of power alone, it would be reduced by at least 40%. Didn't old Senior Xiao mention it just now? Time is the best method to break a formation. This cave abode can't even move, and the Jade Fall Spring formation has been replaced. Even the surface of the formation has a flaw. From what I know, its power has been reduced by another 30%. In other words, 30% of the initial power of the Misty Mountain Maze formation should not be a problem for all of you seniors who are at the upper tier of the 4th grade and under my command. GG. At this moment, the spirit monkey Chang Gung in the distance let out a strange hiss. Sun Kong Shangren raised his eyebrows. He looked at Xiao Hua, then looked at Gong Shu Exn and said with a smile, I'm afraid this old man's beast pet has discovered something. Gong Shu girl, come with this old man and the others to take a look. Deference is no substitute for obedience. Gong Shu Exn also felt strange and nodded. At this moment, the spirit monkey Chang Gung was abnormally happy. It stood at the place where Xiao Hua was previously standing and kept somersaulting. Its small mouth squeaked and its tongue kept sticking out of its mouth as if it was making a face. But when Sun Kong Shangren flew closer, Changgung suddenly flew into Sun Kong Shangren's hand. It lifted up the sleeve of its Taoist robe and hid its head inside, only revealing its red butt. Haha. Gong Shui Xian laughed loudly. Gusu Qiu Di also covered her mouth, her face slightly red. You're a killer. Sun Kong Shangren said with a smile, I just gave you credit and you dropped the ball. You really can't show off. Xiao Hua frowned and asked, Brother Sun Kong, Changgung seems a bit abnormal. It seems to be excited and scared. Is there a problem with the formation here? And it should be. Sun Kong Shangren's face became serious. He nodded and said, This formation looks like the formation spirit that Gongshu girl said. And it's not just one type. There are some that Changgung can devour and some that Changgung is scared of. The profound pure spirit restriction is now a bit damaged. I'm afraid the evil spirits inside are leaking out. Gong Shui Xn flew to where Changgung was and explained, It's also possible that there's only one type of formation spirit. But the formation's leakage is not very uniform. The evil spirits are sometimes strong and sometimes weak, causing Changgung to misunderstand. Maybe it's not that simple. Xiao Hua had a bad feeling in his heart. Then, what is Elder Zhao's opinion? Gong Shui Xan said with a smile, Weren't you just explaining formation Dao to your disciple? From what I've heard, it's quite standard and methodical. It seems that you also understand the Dao of array formations. Xiao Hua shook his head. This old man knows a bit, but I haven't truly comprehended it. I don't have the experience of learning from the most basic foundation like you. Facing a great formation like the Misty Mountain Maze formation, this old man can't trace it back to its source. This old man can only break formation with formation. That's brute force. Gong Shui Xn was already standing in the air, criticizing Xiao Hua without holding back. To put it bluntly, it's ruthlessly destroying a flower. This kind of formation breaking method is effective, but if you can't completely break the formation, then you'll have to face the formation's full counterattack. This method isn't very suitable for the Misty Mountain Maze formation. Then Gong Shui Xian's 7 apertures began to glow with a faint silver light. This light condensed into her eyes. In just a moment, her eyes flashed with a silver-white halo. This halo was like a full moon, falling towards the Misty Mountain Maze formation. Sun Kong Shangren and the others had already flown over and surrounded Gong Shui Xen. Zhai Xingzi and Zhang Daoran even channeled their Dharma powers and released their divine sense. They slowly scanned the surroundings, wary of any changes in the formation. Fortunately, after the time it took to eat a meal, Gong Shui Xen withdrew the eye-clearing technique. The Great Formation didn't have any special changes, and Gong Shui Xen's face carried a deep smile again. Senior Sun Kong. Gong Shui Xen glanced at Changgung, who had been put into Sun Kong's robe, and said, Your demon pet is really powerful. This one just used the eye-clearing technique to look. This is the most damaged part of the Great Formation. From here, you can see the situation of the Origin Formation and Buddhist Formation. Changgung deserves the first merit of this trip. Ah, that's good. Sun Kong intentionally or unintentionally glanced at Xiao Hua and answered with a smile, In that case, Miss Gongshu, can you give half of the benefits to my Changgung? Ah. Gong Shui Xen smiled, her eyes curved like a little fox. It's not too late to wait until Senior's demon pet learns how to break the formation. Alright. Sun Kong shrugged. This old man will wait until I get the formation jade slip from Senior Canglangzi's cave and then give it to Changgung. Zhang Daoran whispered, Miss Gongshu, this Cloud Mountain Maze Formation's Origin Formation and Buddhist Formation's Origin Formation. How is it? Gong Shui Xn withdrew her smile, and her face became solemn. She nodded and said, Senior Canglangzi is really amazing. In addition to the 2 Dao formation mentioned before, which are the few powerful formations I've seen in my life, this Origin Formation and Buddhist Formation are also the great formations that my Confucian cultivators and Buddhist sect have lost. Oh, if it's a lost great formation, how can misunderstand it? Xiao Hua frowned and asked curiously. Did Senior Xiao forget? This one is a descendant of the Gongshu family. Senior Xiao should know what my Gongshu family is good at, right? Gong Shui Xen called him Senior Xiao very straightforwardly. Of course, Xiao Hua was also happy to hear it. Senior Xiao touched his nose and said with a smile, This old man naturally knows. But this old man thinks these are great formations from millions or even tens of millions of years ago. Gongshu family might not be able to preserve them completely. Xiaohua had read all the Confucian classics of the hidden immortal continent. Now he was not comparable to when Fujiwen met him. However, he still only knew that the Gongshu family was extremely mysterious. They had a deep accumulation of mechanisms and origin formations. They might not be worse than the Imo family. However, the Gongshu family's reputation on the hidden immortal continent was far inferior to the Imo family. Of course, Xiaohua wouldn't say this in front of Gongshu Exn. He only vaguely asked Gongshu Exn. How could Gongshu Exn not hear Xiaohua's obscure words? She snorted and said, since the Imo family can preserve the ancient puppet refining method, why can't my Gongshu family preserve the ancient origin formation Dao? This one can reveal that the origin formation that Senior Canglangzi used to protect the cave is one of the best preserved ancient origin formations of my Gongshu family. Xiaohua rolled his eyes and said with a smile, so there's a second and third one. I don't know. Gongshu Exan raised the corner of her mouth and didn't answer. She just pointed and said, this one only knows that this origin formation's name is Golden Wind and Jade Dew. AI, delicate clouds play tricks, flying stars spread hatred, the silver river passes in secret. Golden Wind and Jade Dew meet, it surpasses countless things in the human world. Tender as water, auspicious days like a dream, enduring the Magpie Bridge to return home. If two people's feelings last long, why would they be together day and night? Hearing the name of the origin formation, Gusu Chiodi couldn't help but sigh and recite. When Xiaohua heard this, he couldn't help but be dumbfounded. He then said embarrassedly, the Confucian origin formation is really strange. This name is too lingering. What do you vulgar Taoist sect people know? Gongshu Exan said with disdain, although Taoist sect formations are powerful, their names are unpleasant to hear. What 9 dragon bone lock? What mysterious soul shattering? How can they compare to my Confucian origin formation? The Golden Wind and Jade Dew Great Formation is the lingering feeling of love and longing like a tide. Once one falls into the origin formation, they will wish for death, unable to beg for life. Forget it, forget it. Sun Kong waved his hand. This old man doesn't know anything about Golden Wind and Jade Dew. I only know that an old man is pushing a cart. Miss, why don't you tell me how to break this origin formation and what that Buddhist formation is? Chapter 37:16. Bah. Gongshu Exn spat, her face slightly red, and then said seriously, the other Buddhist formation has also been lost, but fortunately, this one coincidentally found a fragment of a map on a small hill when I was traveling in Nirvana. It was precisely this brilliant glazed golden light Buddhist formation. So this one has a 60% chance of breaking the origin formation and Buddhist formation inside. Brilliant glazed golden light Buddhist formation? Xiaohua slightly furrowed his brows. One of the Buddhist scriptures of the exquisite temple, Great Treasure Accumulation Sutra, Immeasurable Life Tathagata Society, secretly flowed through his mind. He didn't quite understand the relationship between the Buddhist formation he saw earlier and this Buddhist scripture. What? Senior Xiao also knows Buddhism? Gongshu Exn was still keenly aware of Xiaohua's strangeness, and asked with a smile. It's about the same as this one's formation cultivation. Xiaohua said ambiguously. Senior Xiao is really amazing, you know a lot of things. Gongshu Exn's words were more sarcastic than admiring. Xiaohua heard this and smiled bitterly, glancing at Zhai Xingzi. Zhai Xingzi also smiled bitterly. Since Gongshu Exn came here, she gave Xiaohua a hard time, obviously because of Gusu Chiodi. Seeing this, Gusu Chiodi hurriedly changed the topic and urged, Sister Exn, since you have already seen through the Misty Mountain Maze formation, do you want to start breaking the formation? Sister Chio, wait a moment. Gongshu Exan replied, being able to see through a formation is different from being able to break one. The old monks of the Buddhist sect can see through these 4 maze formations, but if you let them break the formation, I'm afraid even their bones won't be left. This little sister wants to see the big formations trend first, and speculate the big formations changes. Then Gongshu Exan clapped her hand, took out a Chengkuan bag, took out a palm-sized formation plate, opened her mouth, and a stream of true qi fell on it. The formation plate produced clouds and waves of inscriptions flowed out, covering the whole formation plate. Then Gongshu Exn waved her hand and the formation plate fell into the formation. Several rays of light appeared and wrapped around the formation plate. After a while the formation plate disappeared. Next, Gongshu Exn didn't stop. She placed a total of 81 formation discs within 100 miles of the formation. When the last formation disc was placed inside the formation, Gong Shui Xian's body trembled slightly. A powerless paleness appeared on her pale face. Yexen? Gusu Chiodi had been by Gong Shui Xian's side. She hurriedly supported Gong Shui Xian and asked with concern, Are you all right? I'm fine, big sister Chiu. Gong Shui Xian's eyes were filled with fatigue as she whispered, I'll be fine after resting for a while. Then Gong Shui Yisan glanced at Xiao Hua and the others not far away and said indifferently, if little sister doesn't show some real ability, how can they give little sister 30% of the benefits? Then Gong Shui Xian reached out and took out a jade bottle. She crushed the bottle and a few drops of fragrant liquid fell into her mouth. As the liquid entered her mouth, Gong Shui Xian's face slowly turned red. Seeing Gong Shui Xian casually throw away the jade bottle, Xiao Hua's heart jumped. He waved his hand and the jade bottle flew into his hand. Elder Xiao, what are you doing? Gong Shui Xian raised her hand as if to stop him, but she was still weak. She knew she couldn't compete with Xiao Hua's spiritual power, so she asked indifferently. Xiao Hua didn't answer her. He took the jade bottle and sniffed it. He nodded slightly. Candle core grass, Hongyang fruit? Lady Gong Shu Yu. This liquid doesn't seem to be an ordinary spirit medicine for strengthening the spirit. Gong Shui Xian's face didn't have any expression. Instead, she showed a trace of coldness and said indifferently, Taoist cultivators are indeed vulgar. Even the liquid I took is my secret. Elder Xiao, don't you know how to respect other people's secrets? Fine. Xiao Hua originally wanted to ask a few more questions. He might be able to help Gong Shui Xian refine some suitable medicinal pills, but Gong Shui Xian clearly had the attitude of keeping people at a distance. Xiao Hua didn't need to ask for a rebuff. Then Gong Shui Xian flew above the formation and told everyone, including Gusu Chiodi, to stay far away from her. She sat cross-legged on the high ground and made strange hand seals. As she waved her fingers, streams of noble qi came out of the void. Gong Shui Xian opened her mouth and spat out a few mouthfuls of pure qi. The noble qi turned into inscriptions and landed on the 81 spots of the Great Formation. Wing wing wing. As if someone was playing a zither, a pleasant sound came from all over the place. Gorgeous scrolls flew out from various parts of the misty mountain maze and unfurled high up in the sky. Gong Shui Xian's eyes shined with the color of the silver moon. Her face was serious. This scene lasted for a full day and night. When the moon fell and the stars became sparse, all the scrolls gradually disappeared in the cold dew. Okay, elders. Gong Shui Xian's voice was a bit hoarse. I've seen through the misty mountain formation. There's no time to lose. Everyone listen to me. Sister Xian. Gusu Chiodi hurriedly shouted, you've used up a lot of essence. Why don't you rest for a while? No need. Gong Shui Xian smiled, I'm just sending people. I'm not doing it myself. I don't need to rest. Okay. You know what you're doing. Gusu Chiodi nodded, but there was still some worry in her eyes. Elders, you must have prepared a lot to break the formation? Gong Shui Xian looked at Zhang Daoran and asked. Zhang Daoran nodded, indeed, but Gong Shui Xian didn't wait for Zhang Daoran to finish and interrupted. You don't need to tell me what you've prepared. I'm only responsible for sending people to break the formation. If you're not prepared enough, don't blame me. Then Gong Shui Xian asked, Elder Sun Kong, take your beast pet to the east. When the sun rises, there will be yang qi rising from the east of the formation. You can use a fire-type magic treasure to suppress it. If the formation spirit's qi leaks out, you can let your beast pet devour it. Yes. Master Sun Kong nodded and clapped his hand. It really was a palm-sized stone strip. The stone strip was engraved with countless flame-shaped runes, and the entire stone strip emitted a scarlet-red light. This old man's scarlet flame stone can be used. Finished speaking, Venerable Master Sun Kong transformed into a rainbow and headed east. Elder Zhang Daoran. Gong Shui Xian looked at Zhang Daoran again and ordered, if you don't have a beast pet, you can take out a cold-type magic treasure and go to the west of the formation. When the sun rises, there will be yin qi rushing out from the west. You don't need to pay attention to it. When Elder Sun Kong takes out his magic treasure and disturbs the Shenqing spirit forbidding formation, the blue sky underworld formation will be affected. The yin qi will turn back. When the yin qi hasn't completely soaked into the spring water, you can use your magic treasure to lock the yin qi in one fell swoop. As the saying goes, to beat a snake you have to hit its weak point. This is the formation's weak point. Good. Zhang Daren's face lit up. I already have a cold-type magic treasure. I've just refined it. It's perfect for today. Elder, please. Gong Shui Xian smiled and raised her hand. Then she looked at Xiao Hua and asked, Elder Xiao, do you have the fire type? Xiao Hua shook his head. I have the metal type, but I know fire type spells. Elder, you actually have the rare metal type. How rare. But compared to Elder Zhai Xing, your strength is still a bit shallow. Elder Xiao and Elder Sun Kong suppressed the Xianqing spirit forbidding formation together. Gong Shui Xian said and pointed at the North Pole, instructing, Elder Dao Ran, when you seal the blue sky underworld formation, the Yin Qi will definitely trigger the response of the Xianqing spirit forbidding formation. If Elder Sun Kong is suppressing the dragon's head, then the North Pole is the dragon's tail. As the saying goes, when a dragon swings its tail, mountains and rivers will shatter. It's even more powerful than when a dragon raises its head. I heard that Elder Zhao's cultivation is extremely profound, so I'll entrust this important task to Elder Xiao. When Elder Dao Ran locks on the formation, the Xianqing spirit forbidding formation will shake like a landslide. Elder Xiao, use your natal magic treasure to suppress it. If this natal magic treasure is of the fire type, it's best. If it's of the metal type, it's also fine. What about this? Xiao Hua opened his mouth and the seal of the overturning sea flew out. Layers of yellow shadows floated on it. Earth-type magic treasure? Gong Shui Xian was a bit dazed. She looked at Xiao Hua up and down and asked curiously, Elder Xiao, what kind of element do you have? Of course it's of the metal type. Xiao Hua said with a smile, but I have a lot of magic treasures. This seal of the overturning sea seems to be perfect for suppressing it. This magic treasure is quite powerful. Although its element isn't very suitable, it's not a big problem. Gong Shui Xian nodded and then looked at Zhai Xingzi. Elder Zhai Xing, you have to guard the South Pole, which is the tail of the blue sky underworld formation. You're good at using the power of the stars. The power of the stars has always been violent, so it'll be twice the result with half the effort to deal with the power of ice. However, you don't have to wait for Elder Xiao to make his move. When Elder Dao Ran makes his move, you can make your move as well. Okay. Zhai Xingzi waved his hand and took the falling star in his hand. Then he followed Xiao Hua and flew in the opposite direction. Seeing the four nascent soul cultivators standing in different places, Gong Shui Xian shouted at Fu Jiwen and the others in the distance, Go and find suitable seniors according to the attributes of your body or magic treasures. If you need anything, they'll tell you. Yes. Fu Jiwen and the others answered in unison and flew in different directions. Besides Fu Jiwen and Xue Ping, there were two other cultivators by Xiao Hua's side. Okay, Elder Sister Qiu, it's your turn now. Gong Shui Xian said with a smile, Do you have ice water or an imperial artifact refined with ice water? This. Gusu Qiu Di shook her head slightly. Elder Sister doesn't have such a powerful imperial artifact. Then, does Elder Sister have a Buddhist artifact? Even less so. Oh, then it's a bit troublesome. Gong Shui Xian frowned slightly. Chapter 37:17. Hearing this, Gusu Chiodi smiled bitterly. Star Child and the others prepared a lot of things, but who knew that Senior Canglangzi's cave has an essence formation and a Buddhist formation? They wouldn't have prepared imperial or Buddhist artifacts. Sister Chiu asked them if they have frigid water. Gong Shu Isin hesitated and said, If they don't, I'll have to think of another way. Gusu Chiodi hurriedly transmitted her voice, but obviously no one had frigid water. Just as Gong Shu Isin was about to think hard, she suddenly smiled and whispered, Sister Chiu, you're mistaken. Frigid water is what we call Confucian cultivators. Taoism calls it innate heavy water. Indeed. Gusu Chiodi also smiled and transmitted her voice again. But after a while, Gusu Chiodi's face showed a strange expression and said, They don't have innate heavy water either. But your Senior Xiao has innate primordial water, is it useful? Of course. Gong Shu Isin raised her eyebrows. Innate primordial water is more effective than innate heavy water. Saying this, Gong Shu Isin took out an imperial artifact that looked like a copper cup and gave it to Gusu Chiodi. She then told Gusu Chiodi the inscriptions to activate the imperial artifact and urged her to get 3 drops of innate primordial water. When Gusu Chiodi returned, Gong Shu Isin said, Sister Chiu, when the 4 nascent soul cultivators suppress the Xianqing spirit forbidding formation and blue sky underworld formation, the golden wind jade dew essence formation and bright glazed golden light Buddha formation will explode at the same time. At this time, You and I must do our best to not let the noble chi of the essence formation and the Buddha light of the Buddha formation collide. Senior Tsang Longzi set up these two formations in the inner layer, which are completely different from the Taoist formations, so that when the immortals and Buddhas collide, the primal chi of the universe will be stimulated. When the power of the three formations collides, everything will be wiped out. Gusuchiodi took in a cold breath and was a bit uncertain. She whispered, "We're only at the 5th level of essence chi, can we break this ancient forbidden formation? Humans die for wealth, birds die for food." Gong Shui Xian didn't answer. She only said a few words. She raised her head and looked at the clouds in the east. She reached out and took out a strange imperial weapon. This imperial equipment was 3 inches long and looked like a small ladder. It also looked like a square fence and was engraved with densely packed armor inscriptions. When Gusuchiodi heard this, she felt helpless. Everyone knew how powerful this misty mountain maze formation was. However, for tens of thousands of years, didn't many cultivators try their best to find this formation? Now that they were already in front of the door, how could they stop? Gong Shui Xian took a few deep breaths. Faint clouds surged around her body. Wisps of noble chi swarmed over. Gong Shui Xian opened her mouth and breathed true chi into the imperial treasure. The imperial treasure gradually expanded. Little sister will go first. Gong Shui Xian flew to the north and stopped about 10 miles away from Gusuchiodi. Gusuchiodi also flew towards the south, stopping after flying for a full 10 miles. She then raised her hand and activated her Zhen Qi. The copper cup glowed with a bronze radiance, and the 3 drops of Xiantian true water began to revolve slowly in the radiance like a bright full moon. Seeing that dawn had broken in the east and a ray of sunlight pierced the vault of heaven, Sun Kong had already released his divine sense to envelop an area of several dozen kilometers around him. Sure enough, under the sunlight, the side of the mountain that previously didn't have the slightest trace of magic power fluctuation suddenly soared up a blazing aura. This aura made a hissing sound in the air. This chi was different from normal Dharma power. It only had a yang chi like the rising of the sun and the setting of the moon. If Gong Shui Xian didn't warn him, Sun Kong Shangren wouldn't have cared. GG. The spirit monkey Chang Gung showed a fearful expression. It flipped in the air again trying to dodge. Seeing this, Sun Kong Shangren didn't dare to be careless. He waved his hand and the scarlet flame stone flew into the air. Under the golden sunlight, the scarlet flame stone emitted a strong flame. Go. As Sun Kong Shangren formed a seal, a wave of Dharma power rushed into the scarlet flame stone. Whoosh! The scarlet flame stone's flame instantly grew stronger. Hundreds of heaven and earth origin chi turned into a hurricane and rushed into the flame. Now is the time. Sun Kong Shangren narrowed his eyes. He watched the chi rush straight into the sky. It seemed to be attracted by the scarlet flame stone's chi and actually changed direction. Sun Kong Shangren's heart tightened and he slapped the top of his head. A chi appeared out of nowhere. The chi condensed into a pillar and landed on the scarlet flame stone. Boom! Like fireworks, a large hand rushed out of the scarlet flame stone. It was completely formed by flames and instantly covered the surrounding several hundred feet. Roar! A hoarse roar came from the air. The chi that rushed out earlier seemed to sense something was wrong. It let out a roar and immediately fell. However, this chi only fell a few feet before Sun Kong Shangren's flaming hand fell and caught this chi in its hand. As for Chang Gung, who was next to Venerable Master Sun Kong, the hair on his body stood up, and his tail was as straight as a stick. His eyes shone brightly as he charged toward the hand, ready to take advantage of the situation. Rumble! Suddenly, the sound of thunder rang out above the oval-shaped formation. It was like a clap of thunder on a sunny day. The entire space began to tremble. Immediately afterwards, a powerful whirlwind appeared below Master Sun Kong. Sand and pebbles immediately flew up from the mountain. Just as the whirlwind appeared, Zhang Daren's body suddenly gave off a strange coldness. Then thousands of needle-like coldness appeared and surged toward Zhang Daoran. Zhang Daoran originally had an ice body, so he wasn't afraid of the cold. However, this coldness was clearly abnormal. Even with Zhang Daren's ability, he couldn't help but shiver. He quickly raised his hand and a strange magic treasure appeared in his hand. This magic treasure was dark green and seemed to be in the shape of a beast. However, its head was missing and only 3 of its 4 hooves were intact. A green light flashed on Zhang Daren's face, and the magic treasure suddenly expanded. The shadow of a monster emerged from the magic treasure, and the moment it appeared, it immediately blocked the cold. At this moment, waves of crashing sounds came from under Zhang Daoran. A dark purple aura that could be seen with the naked eye rushed out from the formation toward Zhang Daoran. The aura's power was extremely strong. Even someone as strong as Zhang Daoran was shocked. He involuntarily activated his magic power and had to first take out a magic treasure to block it. Just as the magic treasure glowed, Xiaohua's voice came, "Brother Daoran, don't be impatient." See. Zhang Daoran took a deep breath and shivered. He quickly retreated. Gong Shuisin had clearly said not to block the Yin aura when it first appeared. Although Gong Shuisin didn't explain, the Yin aura was very clear. This Yin aura was the power of the formation. Zhang Daoran's cultivation couldn't block it. He should avoid it and wait for the Yin aura to return before attacking it. Who knew that Zhang Daoran actually lost his sense of propriety in the formation? If it wasn't that Zhang Daoran's Dao heart wasn't complete, then the formation had the power to bewitch him. Fortunately, Xiaohua reminded him in time. Zhang Daoran suddenly realized. Sure enough, the extremely cold aura rushed into the sky. Layers of ice fell in the nearby space. When the Yin aura reached a height of 1,000 feet, it suddenly rolled down like a waterfall and fell straight back into the formation. Zhang Daoran didn't dare to be careless. He released his divine sense. A cold aura that seemed to be able to freeze divine sense spread toward Zhang Daoran's Naiwan palace. Zhang Daoran was shocked. He hurriedly urged his Yuanying. The Yuanying stretched out its hand and a dark green object like a water droplet flew out from its body. It was the ghost gallbladder Zhang Daoran just obtained from the Jade Pavilion gathering. The Yuanying opened its mouth and spat a mouthful of golden blood on it. Wing wing. The ghost gallbladder vibrated. A layer of ink-like liquid seeped into the Yuanying's hand. The Yuanying's hands formed a seal. A wave of extreme Yin aura came out of Zhang Daoran's body. Zhang Daoran hadn't completely refined this ghost gallbladder. When this aura came out, a layer of ice appeared around Zhang Daoran's body. However, this cold aura blocked the invasion of divine sense. Zhang Daoran was slightly absent-minded. The Yin aura had already fallen a lot. Zhang Daoran lamented the strangeness of this formation. He hurriedly slapped his hand. A pure green light flew out from the top of his head and landed on the magic treasure in midair. The magic treasure was like the finishing touch of a dragon as it gave birth to a magnificent multicolored light. Although there wasn't any roar, it still bravely rushed toward the Yin aura. Kacha. A strange sound came from the formation. Then, gurgle. The sound of a fountain gushing out from the large formation within a radius of 100 miles. Rumble. Just as the strange sound appeared, a series of earth-shaking movements came from the entire formation again. In the far east, Master Sun Kong, together with the red flame stone and monkey Changgung, was lifted up to a height of 1,000 feet. Several Taoist disciples who were preparing to help at the side were also lifted up. They couldn't maintain their balance at all. Below them, hundreds of ridges swelled up and flew into the air. The gravel fell down like rain. At the same time, Zhang Daoran was also lifted up to a height of 1,000 feet. The river that shuttled through the formation also boiled. A destructive aura of yin and yang instantly filled the space of a few hundred miles. Woo-woo. As the heaven and earth rumbled, a powerful earthy yellow light beam rushed out from the North Pole where Xiaohua was. Inside the light beam, the seal of overturning the sea, which was as big as a mountain, produced thousands of pearls. Under the urging of the coiling dragon, it produced a powerful confining force that landed on a corner of the formation. Boom. The entire sky surged with a wave of air again. As the seal of overturning the sea fell, its suppressive force spread toward the far east along the ridges above the formation. The ridges that had already flown into the air were now twisting extremely, but they still slowly fell down. At the connection of these ridges, thousands of gaps were revealed. They were the traces of the Shenqing spirit forbidding formation being damaged by the erosion of time. Chapter 37:18. As soon as Xiaohua moved, Zhai Xingzi didn't dare to stay still. Seeing the hundreds of water lights and ice shards rushing towards him from all directions, Zhai Xingzi's body started to glow with starlight. His entire body gradually became blurry. Woo-woo. Similarly, the natural yuan qi descended from the sky like a hurricane and landed within the starlight. Immediately after, another ray of light flew out from Zhai Xingzi's hand. That falling star was activated by Zhai Xingzi. The several zhang-long starlights soared into the sky and directly pierced into the water lights. It emitted a sizzling sound. Xiaohua had already released a trace of his divine sense. He was constantly paying attention to Zhai Xingzi's movements. Although Zhai Xingzi's magic treasure released starlight, he was still activating the qi of heaven and earth. Xiaohua wasn't disappointed. He knew that Zhai Xingzi was using the power of the stars. However, this power of the stars was condensed from a magic treasure. It couldn't be considered the real power of the stars. However, even if that was the case, Zhai Xingzi's skills were still powerful. Zhai Xingzi's body was like a bright star that shone rapidly and resonated with the falling star. A desolate qi came out from the falling star and pressed down on the formation along with the starlight. Rumble? Huge tremors appeared continuously and suppressed the space around Zhai Xingzi, who was thousands of feet away from him. Sun Kong Shangren, Zhang Daoran, Xiaohua, and Zhai Xingzi were respectively at the east, west, north and south of the Misty Mountain Maze. They used their divine powers to suppress the Shenqing Spirit Forbidding Formation and the Blue Sky Underworld Formation. It was as if 4 giant hands were pressing down on the 4 corners of the formation. Even if the formation spirit and the qi of yin and yang were stirring crazily, they still couldn't break free from this suppression. However, when the suppression above the 4 corners landed in the center of the formation like waves, puff puff, a sound like a fountain suddenly appeared. Right between Gusu Qiudi and Gongshu Isin, a crack appeared in the formation. It was as if a huge eye was slowly opening. This eye was flowing with 2 colors. One was a clear green qi. Inside it, billions of inscriptions flowed like tadpoles. The other was a golden Buddhist light. Inside it, layers of golden inscriptions were like a Buddha or a heavenly dragon, stirring up thousands of Buddhist chants. As the huge crack split open, the 2 colors began to rush madly towards each other. An indescribably terrifying aura was born along with the noble spirit in the void, as well as the power of thought that came out of nowhere. Xiaohua's divine sense sensed this and he couldn't help but take a deep breath. He secretly said, "Sure enough, it's a great array carefully arranged by a great array master." If the great array was in good condition, not to mention 4 late nascent soul stage cultivators, even 4 late spirit severing stage cultivators wouldn't dare to break the array. I really don't know what other tricks this Gongshu Isin has. Just as Xiaohua was thinking, he heard a clear sound coming from Gongshu Isin's location. It was like the cry of a phoenix or the cry of a bird. 3 colored qi rushed into the air and condensed into a Z. That somewhat graceful Z grabbed with its hand. Gongshu Isin's ladder-like imperial equipment fell into the air. Rumble rumble, countless ant-like inscriptions fell from the imperial equipment and fell into the formation called Golden Wind and Jade Dew. These inscriptions were very strange. As they fell, they expanded. Not only did they devour the inscriptions inside the formation, they also stole the noble qi from the void. Moreover, these inscriptions formed poems and articles, falling into the formation. As the number of poems increased, the formation was no longer able to drown them out. Every inscriptions that came into contact with these poems were assimilated, turning into words and sentences of the poems. What was special was that the poems and articles formed by these inscriptions condensed extremely quickly. The poems condensed into articles, and the articles condensed into scrolls. Hundreds, thousands of scrolls formed a mountain of literature, suppressing the Golden Wind and Jade Dew formation, not allowing the formation to disperse at all. What was special was that the scrolls under the mountain of literature fell one by one, forming a dragon-like book city, separating the inscriptions of the formation from the Buddhist light of the formation. While Gongshu Isin was controlling the imperial equipment to block the formation, Gusu Qiudi was not slow either. The imperial equipment that looked like a copper cup tilted slightly, and a stream of green water poured out of the cup, rushing into the Buddhist formation like the Milky Way. The golden inscriptions in the Buddhist formation gave off Buddhist light. This Buddhist light was crystal clear, and every inch of it had a glass Buddha hidden inside. However, when the green water fell and the Buddhist light pierced into it, there was no reflection or penetration. It was as if the light had disappeared. When the thousands of chants fell into the green water formed by the primordial water, they also disappeared into the countless small kiliocosms inside the primordial water. The book mountain expanded rapidly, blocking the light of the primordial formation like an iron wall. The blue water surged like a transparent barrier, blocking the light of the Buddha formation. For a moment, the crack actually stopped there, and the rumbling of the entire formation started to weaken. Incredible, incredible. Even someone as strong as Xiaohua was astonished when he saw the great array begin to slow down. This great array could even block a 7th grade essence energy cultivator in the past, but now it has actually declined to this extent. Can a few 5th grade essence energy cultivators like us suppress it? No, I'm afraid it's not that simple. Xiaohua saw that things were going so smoothly, far exceeding what was recorded in the Jade Eyes. He had a bad feeling in his heart. Xiaohua did not know about other people's divine abilities, but he himself had thought about it for a long time. Some divine abilities that were not afraid of being seen through were supposed to be used here, but just one seal of turning sea suppressed the gate-guarding formation that was close to a tribulation-passing expert strength. Wasn't this too much of a tribulation-passing expert? Sure enough, just as Xiaohua's doubts arose, it was like a wave rising and falling. Just now it was a wave trough, but now the formation's power suddenly rose and a huge wave rushed up. Whether it was Xiaohua and the other Dao cultivators or Gusichiodi and Gongshu Isin, a huge force appeared under them at the same time, pouncing towards them. Wong wong. The seal of turning sea roared loudly, and countless phantoms pounced on the formation one after another. Powerful ripples in the void were actually struck out by these phantoms. Although this seal of turning sea had not been completely refined by green-robed Xiaohua, the aura of a spiritual weapon had already taken shape. All of you quickly retreat. Although the seal of overturning sea had suppressed a corner of the grand formation, Xiaohua was alarmed and had a bad feeling. He hurriedly shouted at Fujiwen and the others, "Come back after this grand formation is broken." Yes, disciple understands. Fujiwen, Xueping and the others did not dare to be negligent. They urged their figures to fly far away. Sun Kong and the others also saw the figures of the other disciples hurriedly escaping. This formation was indeed not something they could participate in with their cultivation. Moreover, Xiaohua's eyes were sharp and his hands were fast. The power of his spiritual weapon was powerful, and it suppressed the north pole of the formation in an instant. Then, the cultivators of the other 3 poles of the formation would not be able to withstand it. Boom boom boom. 3 loud sounds like the growls and roars of ferocious beasts were heard. The counterattack of the formation pounced on Sun Kong. It was so powerful that it caused the faces of the 3 late nascent soul cultivators to change. Sun Kong and Xiaohua worked together to suppress the profound purity spirit forbidding formation. His counterattack was the most powerful. The hundreds of mountain ridges seemed to have come alive at this moment. They broke free from the formation and crazily extended from Xiaohua's location to Sun Kong. Taoist Master Xiao, you are testing me? Sun Kong bitterly smiled and slapped the top of his head with his hand. Poof! A 6-feet-long baby flew out with a snake-like whip in his hand. This baby was wearing exquisite spiritual armor. As soon as it appeared in midair, it immediately opened its mouth. Whoa! A huge wind column was born in midair. Several spiraling flows of vital chi of heaven and earth descended from the sky, forming a huge hole and falling into the nascent soul's mouth. Wong wong. Wind flowers flashed around the nascent soul's body. The nascent soul's entire body seemed to be inflated with air. In a moment it was 1,000 feet tall. Poof! Sun Kong's nascent soul Dharma body had just formed. He pointed his finger, and the crimson flame rock that was originally floating in midair immediately turned into a ball of flame. Countless fire rings flew out from the flame and enveloped an area of several miles. Go! A huge roar came from the nascent soul's mouth. The nascent soul raised its hand again, and the snake-like whip turned into a whirlwind that wrapped around its hand. Soon after, the hand grabbed the flame. The flame borrowed the wind's power and made an even more powerful sound. Tiny thunderclaps came from the void. Strands of hair-like crystal threads rushed into the flame. The flame condensed into 100 feet in size. Outside the flame, there was a layer of faint green wind flow. Fall? This sound seemed to explode from the nascent soul's body. Strands of chi waves rushed in all directions along with this sound. The flaming rock fell with a loud bang. Layers of fire flowed along the roaring mountain ridges in all directions and instantly dyed one side of the formation red. Ao. Hundreds of tiny cries came from the mountain ridges. The mountain ridges trembled rapidly and then calmed down. Xiaohua's first move forced Sun Kong to have no choice but to use his nascent soul Dharma body. Zhang Daoran and Zhai Xingzi, who were in charge of suppressing the blue sky underworld formation, clapped their hands at the same time and released their nascent souls. Their nascent souls also solidified and turned into Dharma idols that were 100 feet in size. However, Zhai Xingzi's body flashed with strands of nebula. On the other side of the nebula were the star marks that were deeply imprinted on the skin of the nascent soul. Looking at Zhang Daoran's nascent soul, although there were some faint talisman scripts around it, these talisman scripts were gradually disappearing. The origin energy of heaven and earth swarmed around the nascent soul's body and not the talisman scripts. Weng. Zhai Xingzi and Zhang Daoran activated their nascent soul dharma bodies almost at the same time. The difference was that Zhai Xingzi's nascent soul's 7 orifices produced a suction force. 7 dragon-like whirlwinds whizzed into the dharma body. On the other hand, Zhang Daoran's nascent soul opened the top of his head. The origin energy of heaven and earth poured in like a waterfall. For a moment, within a radius of 1,000 miles, wind and clouds surged and the weather changed greatly. Chapter 37:19. Haha. Zhang Daoran and Zhai Xingzi's nascent soul avatars roared at the same time. Zhai Xingzi's falling stars turned into 7 dazzling stars, and Zhai Xingzi's nascent soul avatars were in the center of the 7 stars. The 7 stars fell along with the giant hand. Boom. The earth shook and the spring water flowed backward. The yin qi that just rose up was immediately suppressed. However, when Zhai Xingzi's main body was shaking, his eyes flashed with a very puzzled expression. Zhai Xingzi muttered to himself, "Strange, this place seems a bit strange. Why does it make me feel like this?" Seeing that Zhai Xingzi had succeeded, Zhang Daoran did not dare to be negligent. The nascent soul's hand grabbed the magic treasure, and the magic treasure descended at lightning speed. Roar. The magic treasure seemed to have come alive under the control of the nascent soul. The strange beast raised its slightly damaged head and raised its 3 hooves. A strange aura pressed down. For every 10 feet it descended, the condensed ice shards would drop by 10 feet. When the huge beast and the nascent soul's hand landed, the yin energy and the jade current that had surged previously charged towards the center from both ends. Boom. After the collision, everything immediately calmed down. Although there were still small ripples flowing back and forth, regardless of whether it was the mysterious pure spirit forbidding formation or the Yellow Springs formation, the damaged areas became increasingly damaged. Waves of inexplicable fluctuations surged out from those areas. The yang energy and yin energy that surged out formed thousands of air explosions in the sky above the formation. However, these air explosions were like small firecrackers in front of the 3 nascent soul avatars. They couldn't do much. The outside of the formation was very dangerous. Inside the formation, the Golden Wind Jade Du Origin formation was suppressed by Gongshu Exion's imperial weapon. There was no resistance at all. The brilliant glazed golden light Buddha formation resisted a little, but it didn't cause any big waves under the imperial weapon's copper cup and the innate true water. Seeing this, Gongshu Exion's face bloomed with a flower-like smile. Hehe, if we're talking about spells, the Taoist cultivators are more powerful. These 4 cultivators are only at the upper 4th level, but they can suppress the outer layer of the Misty Mountain Maze formation. This really surprised me. Big Sister Chiu, your Zhai Xingzi is much stronger than that Sun Kong Shangren. Although Gusu Chiu Di was not proficient in the art of formations, her cultivation was stronger than Gongshu Exion's. It was easy for her to control the copper cup to defend against the Buddhist sect. Seeing that Zhai Xingzi was fine, she was relieved. Hearing Gongshu Exion's words, the corner of her mouth curled up. She used her chin to point at Xiaohua's direction and teased, "Xingzi is considered powerful, but compared to that person he is still lacking a lot. Look, he didn't even release his nascent soul, yet he forced Sun Kong and the others to utilize their nascent soul spirit bodies. He is the most formidable. So what if he's powerful?" Gongshu Isin lazily replied, "When little sister thinks that he's nearly 2,000 years old, my heart feels sick and nauseous. Sister Chiu, please don't mention it again." Gusu Chiodi opened her mouth and wanted to say something. But at this moment, a faint trace of black gas suddenly appeared between the Essence formation and Buddha formation. The black gas was filled with tiny devils, and a bloody stench instantly filled the entire formation. Devil chi? Gusu Chiodi frowned. She didn't understand why there was devil chi here. She looked at Gongshu Exin, who was also shocked. She stared blankly at the devil chi floating out, unable to react for a moment. She also didn't understand the use of devil chi appearing in White Cloud Mountain's maze formation. But in just a moment, Gongshu Exion's expression suddenly changed, as if she thought of something. But she didn't have time to explain to Gusu Chiodi. She shouted, "Sister Chiu, 5 Chi's unifications, exterminate the devil chi." When Gusu Chiodi heard this, her expression changed slightly. Without hesitation, she slapped her hand on the top of her head and tricolored chi surged out. Her entire body reached out and the tricolored chi immediately turned into a ball of chi that was dozens of feet large. Opposite her, Gong Shui Xan also activated an extremely pure two-colored true chi. The true chi turned into two giant dragons, rushing towards the devil chi. Whether it was the chi ball or the chi dragon, they both let out a powerful roar. In the midst of the roar, the void cracked, the mighty chi pillar suddenly arrived, killing the thin devil chi. But Gusu Chiodi and Gong Shui Xan were fast, but they still couldn't be faster than the mighty chi of the essence formation and Buddha light of the Buddha formation. As the devil chi appeared, the first to surge was the essence formation that was suppressed by Gong Shui Xian's imperial artifact. The inscriptions under the one mountain seemed to have seen an irreconcilable enemy. They all emitted a strong light. This light instantly drowned the one mountain, rushing towards the book city. And between the devil chi and the essence formation, there was also a mighty chi pillar that broke through the void, attacking the devil chi. This mighty chi pillar was indeed rushing towards the devil chi, but still, the mighty chi pillar closest to the essence formation turned to attack the book city and the one mountain. The mighty chi pillar was so mighty, and it was also the pure power of heaven and earth. How could Gong Shui Xian's imperial artifact block it? Under the pincer attack, in just a moment, the inscriptions on Gong Shui Xian's imperial artifact exploded one by one. Waves of mighty turbulence flew above the essence formation. In the turbulence, the one mountain and book city suddenly collapsed. The scrolls mixed with the writings flew all over the sky, and when these writings flew into the air, they involuntarily rushed towards the devil chi. The ladder-like imperial artifact flashed with multicolored light. Not only did it not restrain the crazy inscriptions, it even assisted the essence formation in attacking the devil chi. With Gong Shui Xian's current cultivation level, she couldn't control the imperial artifact at all. Take drastic measures. Gong Shui Xian's face was pale, her arrogant head slightly lowered, her bright eyes looking at the monstrous inscriptions and mighty chi waves. She whispered in a low voice. She knew better than anyone that Song Longzi, who set up the essence formation, had already predicted her plan to break the formation. I really underestimated Senior Song Longzi. Now that things have come to this, I'm afraid we have to use that thing? Gong Shui Xan couldn't control the imperial artifact. Gusu Chiodi also panicked, but Gusu Chiodi's sub-body used the three chis converging to help Gong Shui Xian's two-colored true chi destroy the devil chi. But the devil chi was used by Tsang Longzi to set up the formation. How could it be so easily defeated? The two's true chi destroyed a lot of the devil chi, but the devil chi was even more rampant, attacking the innate primordial water under Gusu Chiodi's copper cup. Gusu Chiodi's innate primordial water was powerful, but it couldn't block all of the devil chi. When the devil chi was created, the Buddha light of the glazed golden light Buddha formation shone brightly, and countless Buddhas, heavenly flowers, and heavenly dragons rushed out from the Buddha light, roaring and roaring as they rushed towards the innate primordial water. Gusu Chiodi's sub-body was huge, so was the imperial artifact's copper cup. Unfortunately, Gusu Chiodi relied on the imperial artifact to control the innate primordial water. She couldn't truly unleash the power of the primordial water, and even Gusu Chiodi herself didn't dare to look directly at the primordial water. Now, under the pincer attack of the devil chi and the Buddha light, the primordial water had already revealed a flaw. As soon as the flaw was exposed, it was immediately invaded by the demonic chi. Sizzle. Countless sounds rang out in the void. Some were miserable cries, some were the mixing of blood and fire, and some were the roars of anger. All kinds of strange sounds came from the innate primordial water. The demonic chi actually started a battle with the Buddhist light in the mini-kiliacosm. One battlefield after another, lives were born and extinguished in the battle between the Buddha and the demonic chi. This had long surpassed Gusu Chiodi's expectations. Amitabha Buddha. In the glazed golden light Buddha formation, an unknown Buddha chant came out, and a huge Buddha statue came out from the Buddha light. This Buddha statue was in the shape of 1,000 hands, and each hand held a Buddha weapon. In the center of each hand there was a Buddha eye, and these Buddha hands executed techniques to subdue the devil, attacking the devil chi through the flaws. Gusu Chiodi's face turned pale, and she also realized that when she used the innate primordial water to suppress the glazed golden light Buddha formation, the Buddha formation did not show much power. After all, the Buddha formation was the same as the cultivation of the Buddha sect, which emphasized tolerance. But now, with the appearance of the devil chi, the mercy of the Buddha formation mixed with the thunderbolts had already exceeded the limit of her control, and the innate primordial water had already started to crumble under the pincer attack of the devil chi. This was still not the most important thing. What made Gusuchio Di and Gongshu Isin tremble with fear the most was that the overwhelming wave of energy and the blazing glazed golden light unavoidably came into contact with the devil energy. Waves of terrifying aura were produced between the two. Strings of bubbles disappeared into the void where the two were sent out. Moreover, the sounds of huge explosions that seemed to resound in their hearts caused the void to collapse. The two's true chi shook uncontrollably. Even their previously awe-inspiring subbodies began to tremble from the inside out. Not good. In an instant, Gusuchiodi and Gongshu Isin thought of the strange phenomenon recorded in the jade eyes that Xue Ping found. Wasn't the scene of the tragic attack on the Misty Mountain Maze formation like this? Go. Gongshu Isin immediately had the thought of escaping, and she looked up at Gusuchiodi. That Gusuchiodi also had fear in her eyes and her Zhen Qi started to shrink. However, at this moment, boom, boom, boom. The situation of the Misty Mountain Maze formation going out of control had already spread to the outer formation, and the two formations that were suppressed by Xiao Hua and the others just now started to counterattack even more crazily. But looking at the Shenqing spirit restricting formation, the hundreds of ridges that were hundreds of miles long were now completely floating in the air, and huge rocks were shaking off from the ridges, and the flames that spread for dozens of miles were also extinguished under the trembling. Under the ridges, roar, roar. The souls that were imprisoned by the formation let out valiant and unyielding, and even angry roars. They were released by the formation, and Sun Kong's nascent soul Dharma body and red flame stone started to tremble under the counterattack of these souls, and patches of golden light were shaved off from the nascent soul Dharma body. Run. Sun Kong instantly had the same thought as Gongshu Isin when he faced the uncontrollable souls, and only one thought appeared in his mind. Chapter 37:20. However, Master Sun Kong's nascent soul only moved a few inches before a huge force lifted him and the red flame stone several feet away. This force forced Master Sun Kong to give up. However, at this moment, Venerable Master Sun Kong's nascent soul raised his head and scanned the formation with his divine sense. The entire formation was a mess, and his divine sense was cut off by the formation. Venerable Master Sun Kong couldn't see the situation of the others clearly. However, he knew that if he stayed here and fought it might be a dead end, but if he escaped it would be a dead end. He didn't believe that without his suppression, Xiao Hua could resist the backlash of the hundreds of souls in the profound purity forbidden spirit formation. Maybe I'll die. If it was before the Jade Pavilion conference, Master Sun Kong wouldn't have cared about the life and death of others. However, after years of life and death together and the trust between them, he understood the importance of trust. Maybe I'll escape. I don't have many choices, but for that heavy trust, I have no other choice. Even if I die here today, I have to face Brother Dao Ran and Daoist Xiao, who exposed their backs to me. Forget it then. I'll die. Thinking about this, esteemed Master Sun Kong looked at the rapidly shrinking nascent soul that was about to enter his body. He clenched his teeth and formed a seal with both hands. He opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood essence. This blood essence was crimson. When the seal landed on the blood essence emitted layers of golden light. Layers of strange fluctuations appeared in the void and landed on the blood essence. Thunderous rumbles echoed in the void and soon, the blood essence was refined into a blood-red rune. Go. Master Sun Kong waved his hand and the rune turned into a stream of light that landed between the nascent soul's eyebrows. Then Master Sun Kong closed his eyes. Break. His divine sense rushed into the nascent soul's eyebrows like a tide. Boom. A light sound came from between the nascent soul's eyebrows. As the rune landed, his divine sense also poured in and a strange rune appeared out of thin air. It was at this moment that Master Sun Kong cut off his connection with the nascent soul. The avatar left in the nascent soul's body let out a miserable scream. Even Master Sun Kong sucked in a breath of cold air. A heart-wrenching pain came from his Naiwan palace. This pain seemed to be unbearable. However, Master Sun Kong didn't have time to comprehend this out-of-body feeling. He clenched his teeth and formed a seal with his hands again. His entire body rapidly expanded under the influence of the seal. Roar? Seeing Sun Kong like this, the spirit monkey Changgung also roared at the sky. Not only did all the hair on its palm-sized body stand up, it also flashed with demonic aura and its body began to uncontrollably expand. As Sun Kong's body expanded, his nascent soul slowly shrank. It was at this moment that Sun Kong's crimson flame stone began to crack under the attacks of the hundreds of souls. Flames shot into the sky, followed by hundreds of primordial souls. Each of them bared their fangs and brandished their claws as they pounced toward Sun Kong. Woo-woo. A huge pillar of primal chi of heaven and earth descended from the sky and landed on Sun Kong's body and nascent soul. The two spirit bodies of the same size opened their eyes at the same time. Clear light flashed in their eyes and they were filled with indifference. Roar. The spirit monkey Changing transformed into a demon body that was hundreds of feet tall and flew into the air. He landed in front of the two spirits. Break. The two souls of Master Sun Kong sneered at the same time. They each reached out a hand and placed it on the spirit monkey's shoulders. Boom. Spirit monkey Changgung's eyes emitted light pillars that were several dozen feet in size. The two light pillars created a powerful suction force. The souls of the ferocious spirits that had already attacked Master Sun Kong were first afraid, then they became even more ferocious. They recklessly charged at Master Sun Kong's nascent soul as if that soul was their innate delicacy. The two light pillars were like a huge whirlpool. Every time they swept across a type of evil spirit, the evil spirit's soul would be firmly sucked in. A large number of evil spirits fell into Changgung's light pillars, and Changgung's body involuntarily expanded. However, whether it was Master Sun Kong's body or nascent soul, the large hand on Changgung's body also shone brightly. The souls were sucked into the two souls, reducing the pressure on Changgung. However, how powerful were the ancient ferocious spirits? How could the spirit monkey Changgung resist them? In just a few seconds, Changgung's face was filled with pain. His huge demon body began to swell. Even Master Sun Kong's body and nascent soul began to uncontrollably expand. The light around them rapidly trembled. Fight. Esteemed Sun Kong's face was already as white as a sheet of paper, but he let out an angry roar and took out a broken piece of jade. He opened his mouth and spat out another mouthful of essence blood. The jade expanded and turned into a palm-sized monster. This jade was actually a rare jade talisman. Shua. This jade talisman was different from Xiao Hua's phoenix illusion. As Master Sun Kong pointed his finger, the jade talisman fell between the nascent soul's eyebrows, which was where the strange rune disappeared. Roar. Master Sun Kong's nascent soul trembled in pain, then light overflowed. As the world's origin energy crazily rushed in, the entire soul turned into the monster's shape. Woo. The monster opened its mouth and spat out a green light. Several ferocious spirits near Master Sun Kong were immediately covered and turned into streams of light that entered the monster's body. However, when the ferocious spirits entered the monster's body, the nascent soul monster's body expanded, and expanded again. Master Sun Kong's eyes flashed with desperation. Even the large hand on Changgung's body increased the suction force. Changgung's body also expanded. Ancient ferocious spirits. Even if Master Sun Kong activated the jade talisman and paid with his life, with his late-stage nascent soul cultivation, he might be able to devour one or two. However, there were hundreds of ferocious spirits in front of him. How many could he devour? The Misty Mountain Maze formation, even if it only had 30% of its power, was definitely not something a nascent soul cultivator could covet. Perhaps in less than the time it took to brew a cup of tea, Master Sun Kong would be swollen by the ancient ferocious beast soul. No regrets. At this moment, Master Sun Kong's heart was filled with satisfaction. There was nothing more satisfying than this moment. That confidence that was worthy of the trust made him generously go to his death. At this critical moment. 800 miles away, a strange phenomenon suddenly appeared. Master Sun Kong was forced to release his nascent soul and even forced to activate a secret technique to enter the out-of-body realm. How good would Zhai Xingzi and Zhang Daoran be? Although the blue sky underworld formation was different from the Shenqing spirit forbidding array, its power matched the Shenqing spirit forbidding array. When the ferocious beast soul of the Shenqing spirit forbidding array broke out, the blue sky underworld formation naturally had a corresponding change. When the fierce souls attacked Venerable Sun Kong, the blue water hidden in the formation also poured out. Waves of blood-red light flashed and a bloody aura that would make one's blood boil rushed out of the formation. Among this aura, a strand of blood-red nether water that was smaller than a thumb rushed into the air along with a strand of blue water that was more than 100 feet thick. This. Zhang Daoran and his nascent soul Dharma body's 4 eyes flashed with disbelief. Zhang Daoran's main body almost cried out, "This is the yellow?" Yellow spring water? Yes, wasn't that blood-red water the extremely rare yellow spring water in the hidden immortal continent? Countless runes flashed in the green water. The runes were not only used to set up the formation, but also to confine the yellow spring water. Gong Shu Yisin said that the green water's power was not as powerful as before. The truth was that the core of the blue sky underworld formation was inside the formation. All the yin qi and water that appeared outside the formation was just a cover to hide the ferocious teeth of the blue sky underworld formation. At that moment, Zhang Daoran used a Dharma treasure to suppress the yin qi within the formation. However, when the yin qi receded, the water of the yellow springs surged again. The runes in the water of the yellow springs peeled off layer by layer. The blood-red water of the yellow springs quickly dyed the water red. The huge water flow was like a blood dragon rushing through the formation and pouncing towards Zhang Daoran. If it was Zhang Daoran before the Yaotai conference, he might not be able to recognize the yellow spring water, or he might not be so afraid of it. However, Zhang Daoran obtained one of the 3 exotic treasures of the Yaotai conference, the cold ghost gall. Although he had not completely refined the cold ghost gall, he had a keen sense of the netherworld's items and knew the power of the yellow spring water. Zhang Daoran was only a late Yuanying stage cultivator. Even if he reached out-of-body or Funshin stage, his physical body, his Yuanying spirit body could not touch a trace of the yellow spring water. The yellow spring water was death qi, and the Yuanying was a spirit body. Zhang Daoran could use a secret technique to refine the cold ghost gall with his spirit body, but he definitely did not dare to refine the yellow spring water. Run. Zhang Daoran had the same feeling as Sun Kong Shangren. A way out appeared in his heart. Moreover, Zhang Daoran was very confident that although the water of the yellow springs had begun to overflow, with his nascent soul and the refined ghost guts, he would definitely be able to escape unscathed from the yellow springs. Run. It was just a thought, but Zhang Daoran immediately killed it. After he escaped, the misty mountain maze would lose its balance and the entire formation would kill everyone on the spot. Moreover, once he left, the yellow spring heaven formation would crazily counterattack Zhai Xingzi. Zhai Xingzi would definitely not be able to resist it. Other than death, there would be no other ending for Zhai Xingzi. Zhang Daoran might not have Xiaohua's heaven-defying luck, but the mercy in his heart was not much less than Xiaohua's or even more. Since he did not intend to escape, Zhang Daoran immediately made a decision. Chapter 37-21. Zhang Daoran's hands formed a seal and he waved his hand. A strange, black object flew out from his chest. It looked like a giant rock, but it was also very broken. Poof. Zhang Daoran opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of essence blood. Jie. The giant rock let out a long cry and extremely strange runes came out from its body. They turned into a red halo that surrounded the giant rock. Rise. Zhang Daoran let out a roar and his entire body became a hurricane. As the red halo shined, it also began to expand like crazy. Shua. A giant wave came and a death aura mixed with blood rushed toward the rock. Roar. The magic treasure controlled by Zhang Daoran's nascent soul also let out a roar and a red halo appeared around its body. The shape of this halo was similar to the rock's. Countless halos appeared before Zhang Daoran and the nascent soul. When the blue water fell on the halos, it was immediately divided into dozens of small streams. However, within these small streams, the water of the underworld was still there. Right at this moment, Zhang Daoran's nascent soul spat out azure light from its mouth, and the infernal glacial ghost gallbladder that was in its hand instantly fell into the light. 1-1. Violent vibrations erupted from the infernal glacial ghost gallbladder, and a series of ghostly heads emerged from within with hair-thin translucent threads intertwined between them. The phantom chill ghost gallbladder fell into the light and the nascent soul sucked. The phantom chill ghost gallbladder followed the light into the nascent soul's mouth. The moment the phantom chill ghost gallbladder touched the nascent soul, Zhang Daoran's body flashed. Just like Sun Kong, Zhang Daoran cut off his own origin soul. However, Zhang Daoran's timing was clearly more mature than Sun Kong's. Aside from the pain on his face, there was also a hint of nervousness. Boom. Icy flames mixed with the smell of blood emerged from the nascent soul's head and washed down the nascent soul's face. Go all out. Zhang Daoran's Dharma body, which was almost 100 feet tall, also urged his true essence. He cast one strange spell after another. Wherever his magic power fell, the yellow spring water from the 2 magic treasure rings was drawn into the nascent soul. Sizzle. The nascent soul's spiritual body collapsed as soon as it touched the yellow spring water. However, the icy flames and blood that fell from the nascent soul's head rushed over and fought with the water of the yellow springs. Phew. Zhang Daoran heaved a sigh of relief when he saw this. Then he pointed at the two magic treasures again. Two eye-like cracks appeared on the back of the magic treasures, and two dark hurricanes emerged from them. The water of the underworld in the halo was instantly sucked in by the hurricanes. Zhang Daoran sighed as he watched his nascent soul collapse and reform from time to time. The ghostly frigid guts and the water of the underworld were locked in a tug-of-war. He endured the pain of his body being corroded by the water of the underworld and looked at the blurry array in the distance. He said in his heart, "Fellow Taoists, this old man can only do this much. Before I die, I will buy as much time as I can. I hope you can safely retreat." As the saying goes, when someone is sad, there will naturally be someone who is happy. Just as the water of the underworld gushed out crazily, the runes in the water were chipped off layer by layer due to the array's attacks. The water of the underworld dyed the water red, and the huge blood dragon roared and rushed towards Zhai Xingzi. Zhai Xingzi was shocked at first. However, when the bloody aura and the unparalleled qi of death rushed into his nascent soul, the starlight around his nascent soul swelled like a lantern. A strange expression appeared on Zhai Xingzi's face, as if he had seen the most inconceivable thing in the world. He actually cried out in a low voice, "Damn it, no wonder this old man felt that this place was very strange. It turns out that the array here actually contains the water of the underworld. I've searched for who knows how many years and I actually found it here today. Heavens, is this old man's luck finally here? Or did my luck change after I followed Xiaohua?" As Zhai Xingzi laughed secretly, the water of the underworld had already rushed into the air. Zhai Xingzi patted his head again. Puff. Several streams of true energy spurted out. Amidst these streams of true energy, a talisman half the size of a palm surged out like a moon surrounded by stars. Although this talisman was only half a piece, it was densely covered with star runes. The star runes formed strange runes. As the streams of true energy landed on it, strands of star runes flickered. Between these flickering star runes, there vaguely appeared stars of various sizes. He then looked at Zhai Xingzi's other hand. He reached into his Chengkuan bag and took out a black ancient magic tool. This magic tool had 9 bends. Between the bends, there were crystals that emitted a strange light. Zhai Xingzi's nascent soul waved its hand. The falling star that had previously transformed into a 7-star flew into the air, still in the shape of a 7-star. Immediately, the nascent soul grabbed, and the demonic artifact fell into the nascent soul's hand, once again combining with the 7 stars. Collect. Zhai Xingzi chanted an incantation. The 7 stars emitted starlight that rushed into the demonic artifact's crystal. Wave after wave of star rings emerged from the demonic artifact, falling onto the water of the underworld. That water of the underworld was immediately absorbed by the star rings into the demonic artifact. The water of the underworld that practically could not resist corrosion was unexpectedly absorbed by Zhai Xingzi's ineffable demonic artifact. Good. Zhai Xingzi's originally anxious heart instantly relaxed. He thought to himself, the nameless ancient scrolls cultivation method is indeed not bad. This demonic artifact can absorb the water of the underworld. In this way, this water of the underworld naturally can help me step into out-of-body realm. As he thought this, Zhai Xingzi's nascent soul's other hand slapped downwards. The star crest that had previously flown out from Zhai Xingzi's Naiwan palace landed on the hand. The nascent soul slowly raised its hand, as if a giant mountain peak was suspended in its hand. However, although this hand appeared slow, it was actually extremely fast. In no more than a few breaths' time, the hand pinched the star crest and placed it on its own forehead. Boom. An extremely brilliant starlight flashed from the nascent soul's forehead. The nascent soul's entire spirit body immediately became illusory. Specks that were like brilliant stars covered the nascent soul's entire spirit body. Break. Just like Master Sun Kong, Zhai Xingzi silently chanted an incantation. His mind's connection with the nascent soul's primordial spirit was severed. Zhai Xingzi's face showed an expression of pain. Weng weng. Zhai Xingzi's nascent soul let out a rumbling sound. Its entire spirit body suddenly compressed, condensing into a fist-sized star core in an instant. Success or failure depends on this one move. Zhai Xingzi steeled his heart. His hand seals activated, and that vast and mighty underworld water was immediately divided into a stream that charged towards the star core. ZZZT. The star core was submerged by the underworld water, letting out an unpleasant hissing sound. Wisps of green smoke emitted from the star core. When the first stream of underworld water dripped down, that star core unexpectedly transformed into 365 tiny fragments. These fragments did not have starlight, but even the underworld water could not melt these fragments. Boom. Immediately afterwards, another stream of underworld water washed down. Zhai Xingzi's corporeal body slightly trembled. When the underworld water fell, those 360 fragments again shrunk by half. Zhai Xingzi endured an indescribable pain. This pain was more severe than having his tendons pulled out and his bones pulled out. This pain originated from his soul. This was precisely the pain of refining the soul that was mentioned in the secret art. Zhai Xingzi's nascent soul star core was washed no less than 9 times with the underworld water. Not only were each fragment as small as they could be, but each fragment also flashed with a trace of bloody light. What a pity! Zhai Xingzi's whole body convulsed into a ball. Hiding behind the demonic weapon, he avoided the torrential underworld water. He secretly regretted in his heart. According to the secret art, the more underworld water washes, the more beneficial it is for the nascent soul. Unfortunately, my cultivation is not enough, so I can only wash 9 of them. If I can wash 9 of them, not to mention stepping into the spirit-severing stage, even crossing the heavenly tribulation is within reach. Forget it. Just as he regretted, Zhai Xingzi woke up again. Opportunities are opportunities. In this moment, I can use the underworld water to cleanse my body. The demonic weapon also contains the underworld water. In the future, there is hope for me to refine the star arts. Why should I think more? Immediately, Zhai Xingzi urged on the secret art again. A mouthful of essence blood fell onto those 365 star cores. Wing. Several hundred star cores vibrated at the same time, each emitting faint star markings. These star markings floated in midair, forming a complete star crest. Boom boom boom. A myriad of heaven-earth origin chi condensed into a hurricane that fell towards the star crest. Strands of sparkling light flickered, and thunderbolts similarly struck down. An extremely small nascent soul appeared from the flat star crest. It slowly swelled, reaching more than 100 zhang. But this nascent soul's entire body was covered in star markings under the thunderbolts. Following the disappearance of the thunderbolts, all of the star markings also disappeared. The entire nascent soul was incomparably solid, no different from an ordinary corporeal body. The nascent soul originally had its eyes closed. When the spirit body was completed, the nascent soul opened its eyes. Its 2 black pupils flashed with endless starlight. Swoosh! The nascent soul suddenly opened its eyes. Both of its hands waved, and 2 pillars of starlight fell onto the still roaring underworld water. That water flow instantly quieted and the blood-colored markings quietly contracted. 100 li away an anomaly suddenly appeared. Zhai Xingzi raised his head to look. It was precisely Xiaohua's North Pole. Xiaohua. A slight smile suddenly appeared on Zhai Xingzi's originally pained face. He turned his head to look at his nascent soul that seemed to have been reborn after breaking through. Then he looked at the already receding underworld water. Unexpectedly, he used his hand to rub his nose and laughed. This kind of opportunity, even this old man can benefit from it. Presumably, Master Sun Kong and Zhang Daorang can also do the same. We are already like this, so what fortuitous encounter did Taoist Master Xiao have? It's a pity that this old man's divine intent cannot pass through. That is, when Zhai Xingzi muttered to himself here, he saw that at the north pole of the cloud mountain bewildering array, hundreds of magnificent lights soared into the sky, imposing and vast. Back to Xiaohua, when that profound purity spirit forbidding great array gave birth to an anomaly, Master Sun Kong's nascent soul body was sent flying into the air by the power of hundreds of vicious spirits. Xiaohua and Master Sun Kong respectively suppressed the head and tail of the mountain ridge. The force of impact he received was not any less than Master Sun Kong's. However, how could Master Sun Kong compare to Xiaohua's cultivation? Moreover, when Xiaohua saw that the force coming from the bottom of the great array was about to overturn his body, he immediately roared and took out the wishful staff. He gathered his strength and fiercely struck at the bottom of the great array. Chapter 37:22. There was a loud boom. As the wishful steel staff fell, the fierce soul attacking Xiaohua was immediately suppressed. Of course, this suppression was only temporary. With the strength of Sun Kong, he could only resist 1 or 2 fierce souls. Xiaohua suppressing 4 or 5 of them was already good. Immediately, hundreds of fierce souls broke out from the runes on the ridge and rushed madly towards Xiaohua. Xiaohua was shocked and urged the heavenly law embodiment technique. The hurricane within a radius of 10 miles suddenly rose, and countless heaven and earth essence chi poured into Xiaohua's golden body. Beat. Xiaohua waved the wishful staff in one hand and sent the fierce souls flying. His other hand clenched into a fist, and almost one in each hand, the fierce souls were also sent rolling in the air. Unfortunately, the ancient said that 2 fists were no match for 4 hands. What's more, Xiaohua was facing hundreds of fierce souls. Which one of these fierce souls was not a powerful beast in the past? Although after thousands of years of tempering, these fierce souls had dissipated a lot, but it was still not something that Xiaohua could resist alone. Although Xiaohua's staff technique was exquisite, although Xiaohua's fists and feet were unparalleled, in just a moment, Xiaohua was already a little tired. Where is the green-robed friend? Xiaohua saw that he was unable to resist and did not dare to neglect, so he shouted. Whoa! Above Xiaohua's head, a 6-colored brilliance suddenly appeared and enveloped a fierce soul that was pouncing towards him. Ao. The fierce soul tumbled in the air and howled in grief. That fierce soul's figure had become much dimmer. Woo. The green-robed Xiaohua took control of the invisible Yuanying and urged the Kunlun mirror to destroy the enemies. Similarly, after another moment, the green-robed Xiaohua felt that it was somewhat strenuous. Although the Kunlun mirror was powerful, it had not reached the point where it could kill the ferocious soul. Although the ferocious soul temporarily retreated, when it counterattacked again, its strength became even more powerful. The light beam of the Kunlun mirror became more and more difficult to condense, and its power began to decline. Rumble? Seeing this, the green-robed Xiaohua did not hesitate to grab with his hand. Countless heavenly thunder appeared out of thin air and fell on hundreds of fierce souls. Swoosh! Seeing the heavenly lightning falling, a thin mist was produced in the blue sky underworld formation. There were traces of blood-colored underworld water in the mist, and the heavenly lightning turned into nothing when it fell into the mist. Damn it! Xiaohua cursed angrily. He knew that Song Longzi had already plotted against him using the thunder-drawing technique. Boom boom boom. The heavenly lightning did not fall, but the ferocious spirits were stimulated by the heavenly lightning's might. Ferocious spirits of different colors and shapes rolled down the mountain rocks, roaring as they rushed out of the great formation. Each and every one of them bared their fangs and brandished their claws as they pounced toward Xiaohua. How terrifying! As he looked at the ferocious spirits that were far more ferocious than him, Xiaohua felt a sense of powerlessness. He could execute a divine ability to kill one, or he could rack his brains to kill 10, but he couldn't kill a few hundred ferocious spirits at once. Although Xiaohua's fleshly body had been tempered to an incomparably solid state by the enormous stone formation of Yaotai Mountain, it was still slightly insufficient in front of these ferocious spirits. Needless to say, as long as Xiaohua had enough time, he would definitely be able to easily absorb this ferocious spirit. The secret technique of the spirit husbandry sect was indeed the nemesis of ferocious spirits. Roar! This ferocious spirit roared, and it was very tragic. More and more ferocious spirits nearby heard it and rushed over. Green-robed Taoist, please return. Xiaohua sneered and ordered. Green-robed Xiaohua urged his formless nascent soul to enter his dantian. Where is the soul cultivator? Xiaohua shouted again. I'm coming. A green light flashed, and soul cultivator Xiaohua appeared in his dantian. His hands were like dancing butterflies, and in an instant, a green mark appeared between the eyebrows of the 140 nascent souls in Xiaohua's dantian. Rise. Soul cultivator Xiaohua softly called out. These nascent souls simultaneously raised their left hands and hit their own heads. Rise. Xiaohua's nascent soul sat cross-legged on top of these nascent souls' heads. The head of his nascent soul sprayed out a brilliance, and the heads of the 100 nascent souls also sprayed out a multicolored brilliance. Under the leadership of Xiaohua's nascent soul, hundreds of brilliance sprayed out from Xiaohua's head. Rumble? These 100 or so brilliance might not be conspicuous in Xiaohua's dantian, but when they came out of his dantian, they were a myriad of phenomena. Not only did they produce a rumbling sound, they also stirred up the world's origin energy. One by one, they turned into pillars of light several feet in size and soared into the sky. Not only did they illuminate the North Pole where Xiaohua was located, but they also illuminated the entire 100-mile radius of the Misty Mountain bewildering array. The indescribable phenomenon shrouded the area around Xiaohua and immediately attracted the attention of 3 nascent soul cultivators and 2 Confucian cultivators. Xiaohua stood in midair with a calm expression and looked at the 100 or so brilliants that soared into the sky. He calmly chanted a mantra. Swoosh! The 100 or so brilliants descended, and every single brilliance enveloped an ancient ferocious soul. Every single nascent soul was executing the secret technique of spirit husbandry sect in Xiaohua's lower dantian. Strands and pieces of ferocious souls were refined by this secret technique and rushed into the spirit bodies of the nascent souls. Every single nascent soul spirit body was visibly swelling up. Rumble. The Confucian cultivator Xiaohua in his middle dantian also didn't miss the opportunity to execute the 5 qi righteous lightning. The places where the lightning landed were like the water of the netherworld cleansing Zhai Xingzi's nascent soul's spirit body. It cleansed the ferocious souls that were absorbed into the spirit body mercilessly and helped the nascent soul to absorb them. None of the hundreds of ancient ferocious souls were inferior to Qiao Ho. In fact, every single one of them was even more ferocious than Qiao Ho. They were all ferocious souls that Song Langzi had carefully selected to guard the door. How bad could they be? Although they had been imprisoned in this profound purity spirit forbidding great array for tens of millions of years, they still had the nourishment of the great array. Although the restriction of the great array had gradually been worn down, they were still as ferocious as before. Now that they saw someone actually challenging them, how could they dodge? One by one, they gathered the souls that they had distributed within the great array and madly attacked Xiaohua. Buzz. Xiaohua frowned. His divine sense rushed out and did his best to resist the imprisonment of the great array. Although he couldn't rush out more than 10 miles within a range of a few miles, Xiaohua could still barely resist. However, these ferocious souls were really too powerful. Chapter 37-23. Oh no, this is bad. Sun Kong Shangren is startled. He immediately calms his mind and activates his secret technique. He secretly cries out, "Why am I suddenly confused at this time? There must be geniuses in this world, there must be almighty people who are stronger than me. Rather than letting this almighty person be my enemy, it's better to let this almighty person be my old friend. It's my good fortune to be able to meet Taoist Master Xiao. Not to mention that because of Taoist Xiao, I joined hands with Zhang Daoran in the Jade Pavilion Conference and avoided the ending where both sides suffered heavy losses. Not to mention that because of this, I obtained the Green Abyss Dragon Saliva. Today, because of Taoist Xiao, I was able to make great progress in my cultivation because of the secret technique. Based on this alone, what qualifications do I have to be jealous of Taoist Xiao? I can't thank him enough, right? But why is my Tao heart suddenly unstable? Oh no. Sun Kong Shangren suddenly realizes something. A burst of ecstasy rushes into his heart. Could it be that I'm going to break through? Soon after, Sun Kong Shangren didn't dare to think too much. He tried his best to connect with his nascent soul and let go of the ominous soul that he couldn't completely control, leaving only the ominous soul that he could control to continue absorbing. However, just as Sun Kong Shangren was going all out, a trace of doubt appeared. Perhaps Xiaohua also has the same idea as this old man? He may not be able to deal with these vicious souls, but he wants to sacrifice himself to save our lives. At this time, Xiaohua is naturally not fighting alone. More than 100 nascent souls are fighting together. With these 100 nascent souls, the Shenqing spirit forbidding formation is no longer a threat. After absorbing hundreds of ancient vicious souls, it's only a matter of time before his cultivation improves greatly. Moreover, as the Shenqing spirit forbidding formation stabilizes, the Yellow Springs formation of the Cloudy Mountain maze starts to wreak havoc again. What's this? The aura of the Yellow Springs water weakens and floats to Xiaohua's left side. Xiaohua frowns. His heart is moved. Netherworld water? This formation. Oh, I understand. In just an instant, Xiaohua came to a sudden realization. His admiration for Tsang Longzi was like a torrential river that flowed endlessly. This is a formation master, this is a senior of our Taoism. It's fine if he doesn't make a move, but once he does, it will definitely shock the heavens and earth and make ghosts and gods weep. With this ancient ferocious soul and the netherworld water, the balance of yin and yang, the fusion of life and death, it is truly difficult to resist. Oh no. If that's the case, then Zhang Daoran and Zhai Xingzi will be in deep trouble. If it was anyone else, it would surely be difficult to deal with this netherworld water that was filled with death qi, and they would surely have no choice but to flee if they didn't possess a great divine ability or an unusual secret technique. However, for Xiao Hua, it was an extremely simple task, especially now that he had successfully tempered his divine will. Quick! While thinking, Xiao Hua didn't dare to be negligent. He opened his mouth and the Kunlun mirror flew out. Xiao Hua formed a seal and hit the Kunlun mirror. The Kunlun mirror emitted a 6-colored brilliance from mid-air and covered the area around Xiao Hua. Then Xiao Hua withdrew his divine will and swept it towards the netherworld water. As soon as he touched it, his divine will was immediately corroded by the netherworld water. However, the moment Xiao Hua's divine will was corroded, the netherworld water immediately flowed into the inside of the space like a trickle. For Xiao Hua, who had the inside of the space collecting the netherworld water, was that simple. Xiao Hua was that willful. Using his mind to absorb things was naturally much easier than using a secret technique to absorb the primordial ferocious souls. After a short while, the primordial spirit forbidding formation and the yellow springs formation returned to a temporary balance. The raging primordial chi of heaven and earth and the rampant restrictive spells slowly calmed down, and the formation within 100 miles became calm again. No one knew that Xiao Hua had actually taken away the uncontrollable water of the yellow springs without anyone noticing. Both Zhai Xingzi and Zhang Daoran saw the phenomenon of Xiao Hua absorbing the ancient ferocious soul clearly. However, Zhang Daoran didn't think that Xiao Hua could help him. The yellow springs formation was so powerful. Needless to say, the profound purity spirit forbidding formation was even more so. Even if Xiao Hua could break the profound purity spirit forbidding formation, he probably couldn't save him from danger. Moreover, the netherworld chill ghost gallbladder was refined by Zhang Daoran with the help of the netherworld water. It only took the time to drink a cup of tea to finish. Of course, this kind of action was more of a resistance than a refinement. Without the netherworld chill ghost gallbladder, Zhang Daoran didn't have the strength to resist the netherworld water. Thus, while Zhang Daoran was hoping that Xiao Hua and Sun Kong would be able to escape the formation alive, he also used his cultivation technique to fuse the refined netherfrost ghost gall into his nascent soul, once again resisting the corrosion of the yellow springs. Between life and death, Zhang Daoran didn't have any extra thoughts to be happy about his cultivation rising. He only wanted to resist for as long as possible. Until the end, he realized that the netherworld water was gradually decreasing. There were even signs of it drying up. What's going on? Zhang Daoran was surprised at first, then he was ecstatic. How much power could Gusu Qiudi and Gongshu Isin have to resist? Especially Gusu Qiudi. Seeing the outer formation shaking, she was already worried for Zhai Xingzi. She knew that escaping wasn't the best choice. The inner formation was the core of the formation. Only by stabilizing the inner formation with Gongshu Isin and herself, or even, as long as they stabilized the inner formation for an extremely short period of time, the outer formation would be stabilized as well. Only then would she be able to escape with everyone else. Spinning a cocoon around ourselves? This is the real definition of spinning a cocoon around ourselves. Of course, Gongshu Isin also sensed that her escape route was sealed. Her originally firm state of mind was shaken. In my life, I don't know how many primordial formations and dharma formations I've solved. Now, I'm trapped in a dharma formation. Seems like, the ancient people are right. I must die today. However, to be able to see such a beautiful Taoist formation, I have no regrets in this life. Yes, the outer formation had 2 layers of shocking Taoist formations. The inner formation was against the Buddhist formation. In the middle there was even devilish chi as a guide. In Gongshu Isin's eyes, such a great formation was more beautiful than the most beautiful scenery in the world. She really felt blessed to be buried in it. In the chaos of space, the explosive forces were like cultivators attacking blindly and crazily. There was no pattern at all. Gusu Qiudi and Gongshu Isin couldn't be distracted by the primordial and Buddhist formations anymore. The only thing they could do now was to protect themselves. Their previously majestic subbodies were torn apart by the forces everywhere. They were in pain. However, the 2 of them didn't dare to completely retract their subbodies. The scarred subbodies were barely able to protect their main bodies from the attacks of the inner formation. However, the torn subbodies didn't seem to be able to protect the two for long. Only by suppressing the primordial formation and Buddhist sect in the inner layer can we have a chance to suppress the two yin-yang formations in the outer layer. And now, the biggest possibility is to erase the demonic qi. Then suppress the Confucian formation and Buddhist sect separately. Unfortunately, not to mention the inner formation, the outer formation is already raging. No one can stop it. What if someone can stop it? Gusuchiodi suddenly thought of something and asked. Gongshu Isin shook her head slightly. Impossible. There can't be a cultivator who is proficient in the essence of Buddhism, Taoism and Confucianism. While they were talking, the impact of the primordial formation and Buddhism sect had already begun. The waves that soared into the sky began to bloom. No matter if it was Gusuchiodi or Gongshu Isin, although they tried their best to activate their cultivation and unleash the greatest power of the two imperial weapons, their power was too weak. It was even weaker than an ant trying to shake a tree. The two subbodies collapsed and could no longer protect the two of them. Gusuchiodi and Gongshu Isin were the same as Zhang Daoran. Their hearts were as cold as ashes. However, they were still inferior to Zhang Daoran. Zhang Daoran still had a trace of hope, but they only had despair. However, just as the destructive aura filled the entire formation, the two female cultivators' hearts were like dead ashes. They could only rely on the thought in their hearts to maintain the formation. Suddenly, Gusuchiodi shouted, "EXN, hurry up! The outer formation has stabilized. We can escape." How is that possible? Gongshu Isin's cultivation was lower than Gusuchiodi's. She was stunned when she heard Gusuchiodi's reminder. However, she immediately used her divine sense and was immediately overjoyed. However, her thoughts were more profound than Gusuchiodi's. She happily shouted, "You really didn't disappoint me." Good. Gongshu Isin saw this and also shouted, "Since Elder Shao has this ability, then I'll leave the formation to you." After saying that, Gongshu Isin activated the weapon again. Under the weapon, when Mountain and Book City majestically appeared again and firmly controlled the Golden Wind and Jade Dew formation. The strangest thing was not Gongshu Isin's primordial chi formation. The Golden Light Buddhist sect was originally crazily counterattacking. When Xiaohua's innate primordial water separated the Buddhist sect from the primordial chi formation, the Buddhist sect had already calmed down. Then, in the time it took to drink a cup of tea, the Buddhist sect became as docile as a dog. Gongshu Isin didn't have time to think about the changes in the primordial chi formation and the Buddhist sect. While activating the weapon, one scroll after another mixed with runes, and even some Buddhist documents flew out of her hand. After the time it took to eat a meal, she saw a thumb-sized whirlpool suddenly appear on the left side of Gusuchiodi. Gongshu Isin was ecstatic. "Great! I finally found the essence of the Misty Mountain Maze formation. Songlongzi is really a rare Taoist sect senior. Compared to Songlongzi, the difference is like heaven and earth." It was rare for the arrogant Gongshu Isin to lower her head like this. Xiaohua tried his best to activate the innate primordial water, and a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. Xiaohua hurriedly shouted, "Lady Gongshu, don't just think about worshipping our Taoist sect senior here. Hurry up and break the formation. We can't hold on for much longer." He flew into the air and sat down cross-legged. He released his mind to collect the netherworld water with all his might. When the time was right, Xiaohua withdrew his mind. The remaining netherworld water was enough for Zhai Xingzi and Zhang Daoran to use for their cultivation. Zhang Daoran and Zhai Xing naturally didn't know that the netherworld water was collected by Xiaohua. They were overjoyed when they saw the netherworld water disappearing. Both of them closed their eyes and activated their secret techniques. One was reconstructing the Yuanying while the other was refining the Ghost Gall. Both of them were slowly moving towards the 5th level of origin power. Wing. The entire array was stabilized. Xiaohua's mind also entered his lower dantian. His hands formed seals. Thunderous sounds could be heard from the void nearby. Streaks of lightning swam around the light pillar. When they landed on the evil spirits, the evil spirits were immediately torn apart. The fragments increased the absorption speed of the light pillar. For a total of 49 days, Xiaohua didn't stop for a moment. The light pillar rotated above the array and absorbed all the ancient evil spirits into his lower dantian. Of course, it was impossible for the nascent souls to refine these evil spirits all at once. Even Xiaohua's formless nascent soul had absorbed a lot more evil spirits than normal nascent souls. They were all piled up in the nebula, waiting for the right time to refine and truly absorb them, turning them into his own spirit body. Rumble. When the last evil spirit was absorbed by Xiaohua's invisible Yuanying, the entire cloud mountain shook. Thick cracks appeared where the mountain ridge was previously. The entire cloud mountain shook and moved rapidly, slowly breaking into 3 parts. The jade-green water that surrounded the cloud mountain had completely dried up at this moment. Deep holes appeared all over the cloud mountain. Roar. A long roar resounded from the east, and then Sun Kong Shangren's figure arrived in the form of a rainbow. Seeing Sun Kong Shangren's refreshed appearance, Xiaohua smiled and cupped his hands. "Congratulations, brother Sun Kong." "I don't dare." Sun Kong stood in the air and respectfully returned the greeting. "It's all because of Daoist Zhao's great ability. If it weren't for Daoist Zhao suppressing these ancient evil spirits, how could I have such an opportunity? Once again I thank Daoist Zhao for his kindness." "Hee, it's not that this Zhao is great, it's that this Zhao's magic treasure is powerful," Xiaohua answered with a smile. "Moreover, this is also Brother Sun Kong's own opportunity. Brother Sun Kong's previous accumulation is enough. It has nothing to do with this Zhao." Sun Kong knew Xiaohua's cultivation was profound, but he definitely didn't expect that those several hundred ancient evil spirits were absorbed by Xiaohua. He nodded and said, "Magic treasures are part of the abilities of our Daoist cultivators. Daoist Zhao having such a magic treasure is our Daoist fortune." Congratulations. Zhang Daoran flew over as well. Looking at his smiling face, it was also a blessing in disguise. Same to you, same to you." Sun Kong returned the greeting. He looked Zhang Daoran up and down and said with a smile, "I didn't expect Brother Daoran to have such a harvest. Looks like you also had an opportunity." "That's right." Zhang Daoran was very emotional. "I thought I would be buried in the Jade Fall Yellow Springs formation today, but who knew?" Just as they were talking, Zhai Xingzi's voice came from afar. "Brother Daoran, you're really amazing. So much Yellow Springs water was absorbed by you?" Zhang Daoran was a bit dazed.